Hey, everybody, welcome to Office Hours. Merry Christmas. It is Christmas Day, and we're here at Office Hours. We not breaking the tradition. If you're watching on YouTube and you want to actually be part of the conversation, you can jump into Zoom. You'll see a link down below. If you want to jump into the actual conversation, you'll need to get the link inside of Zoom to get to Makana. That's kind of the little travel that goes on there. If you want to be part of this panel, you need to have good internet, good audio and video, and you need to raise your hand. Be here early. You have to be here by 6:40 in the morning. We do mic checks then. Once we do the mic checks, we close up the panel, and that's what we're going to have for the day. But we would love to have you join us. If you have knowledge to share with other people, this is a pretty great forum. We have hundreds of years of experience here, and we just want to keep adding. There's never enough. So we'd love to have you join our panel. We open at 6. 6 o'clock is when we get started. I can't promise anything. We're checking our tech and talking and just kind of bouncing around. So 6 o'clock is a good time to show up if you just want to kind of have behind the scenes. We also have some pre-shows and post-shows at 5 a.m. and then after the show that you can just hang out as well. Again, no promises on those ones. We're just, it's very casual, and we break up into some rooms if you want to. So that's kind of how that's structured. Of course, every morning we do a 1 hour. Today we're just doing 2 hours of a general discussion, but usually do 1 hour and then a vertical. We will be having focus on education tomorrow, as usual, and then the general discussion on Sunday. And I think we've got some questions coming in. It is important to ask those questions. This show is run by all of you. We don't have an agenda other than to answer your questions. So you kind of make up the whole show. So definitely, if you're an attendee, ask questions. And the best thing to do is, I really feel like the example a couple days ago where I thought of something in a meeting, I didn't even bother to try to figure it out. Didn't even bother. Like it crossed my mind of like, oh, I want to change lights intensity and color by frequency. I'm not going to figure that out. I'm just going to ask it tomorrow morning. I asked it, and in 3 minutes we had a great solution, and it saved me hours of trying to figure that out. And so you just want to take advantage of the group that way, and use it to get some of your research done as a group, as opposed to by yourself. So think of those things that you're trying to figure out and bring them in. It makes the conversation better and richer for you to bring those real world questions into the conversation. Anyway, I think we are stacking up some questions. Bill, do you want to?
We're ready to go.
Alex, sorry, Bill, can I just jump in for a second? I think it's important to note that 9 months exactly ago today, Alex sent out a tweet that was thinking about just doing something, thinking about just doing a little Zoom call for these production guys. So it's been an interesting gestational period that we've just had of this 9 months. Had you have said in that tweet, do you know what? I think for the next 9 months, we should go on a Zoom call every single day. And I predict that on Christmas Day, there'll be 100 people in Zoom with us wanting to just talk about tech for a couple of hours. I think everyone would have said you are crazy, and that would never happen.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for doing it. What an amazing 9 months it's been.
And thank you to everyone for being part of it. It is even on Christmas Day, on Sundays, on days where I get 2 or 3 hours of sleep, because I'm doing production, it is still a joy to get up every morning, hang out with everybody. Like there's no effort on my part. Like it's just, I'm looking forward to it. And I just, and it comes from the contribution from all of you and how everyone participates in this group. It is a special, I mean, I definitely am clear of how special this group is. I don't think that it could ever happen again. So that's why I'm so intent on growing it and making sure that it kind of keep on pouring water on it, and just try to keep it going. And I just really appreciate the effort that everyone puts into making it work. There's so many people behind the scenes that are making it work with their own time. There are, and then the attendees, every attendee here that's asking questions is voting on questions and is part of the chat. That makes the entire thing richer. It's a really an amazing, it is the richness of the group is totally driven by the group. And so it's amazing. And I wouldn't have thought that I would do it either. Like when I said, oh, I'm going to do this, I was like, oh, we'll see how it goes. We'll just pop on and see what happens. So I didn't predict it either. So it's amazing. Anyway, thank you. And let's go to the first question.
Sure. Our first questioner today is frequent questioner James Babbitt of San Diego here. Hi, Alex. Excellent quality in the second hour with Elmo yesterday. And for those of you who might not have been there, not Elmo from Sesame Street, but Elmo, who was the original creative artist on the record, Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. What gear did you use for the Zoom and what for his broadcast? And what Zoom settings did you use for the high quality audio and video? Could you show us a photo of the camera and lighting setup? Is that possible? And you're muted.
Would I take photos of behind the scenes? Me? Yes, of course I did. I took one just for you guys. I was waiting for the question. I know like somebody's going to ask how we put this together. So let me share this.
Before you do, I do have to say that it was every time a guest comes on, I try to do a screenshot of the guest, and usually I have to sit there in Photoshop and adjust the light and make it look somewhat decent. With Elmo, I just basically took it, I put it in Photoshop, and I go, no, that's pretty much it. It looks good.
Yeah, it was, I definitely felt like I mean, it's my neighbor, so I definitely wanted to make sure it worked well. I had planned to go actually heavier than I did. I was planning to bring in multi-camera and stuff, and turned out my day 2 days ago before I got set up, got a little unwound working on some stuff. So I took a single camera. I'll show you what I did here. Let me screen share this. It's a little messy. Not a real production. So anyway, so what we had here are, this is what I brought in. This is Elmo's living room. So that wasn't a digital background. Some people had asked. That is really Elmo's room, house. And then these are Nanlite 100Bs, which I found to work nicely. They weren't even still overpowered, but they were able to give some nice keys, to that process. Just some basic light stands. I used two SM58s, one for the guitar and one for the mic for him. He had some other wireless stuff that had a little bit of noise in it, so I brought in the SM58s and we used a wired connection. Those went into a mix pre. I was having some issues because the mix pre was kind of preset for something. So right at the last minute, I reset it, and I forgot that it would go into basic mode when I reset it. But then I already did the mic check, so I didn't get a separate. I wanted to have separate track records for the guitar and his voice, and I didn't get that. And it also made there's a whole bunch of things that made it harder. I haven't used basic mode for a long time, but after we did the mic check, I didn't want to change it. I was like, if I hit this and something doesn't work, and now we're live. So anyway, so that was but that was the mix pre was doing that. Now I took the mix pre's 1/8" jack out, and I didn't have much cable, so you can see it stretching out over here. That and this was all done relatively quickly, as you can see. I'm a little embarrassed to show you my horrible wiring skill set here, but this was hanging through here. This got to the mix pre so that I had some audio in the camera. 6K camera with a 24-70 lens. Use this. This is a really nice stand that I thought was going to be a third the size that it is. When I bought it, I thought I was going to use it as a tabletop stand, and it's like massive. So anyway, it's a Blackmagic monitor that I had in my office. There is a JBL or not a Fostex speaker hidden right under here. That was your talkback. I suddenly realized that I had forgotten until the last minute about the monitor and the that he had to be able to hear and see you guys. I was working really fast and happy that I could see and hear him. So I brought this over and put the speaker in, and I needed something quickly to convert that. So I used a Pix 240, and the Pix 240 was just there to HDMI. I sent the HDMI and video out into the Pix 240. The Pix 240 will then, has audio out. So I just said the audio out is channel 1 and 2. So that Pix 240 fed the speaker. It also converted the signal to SDI, which allowed me to. So it was a HDMI to XLR converter plus HDMI to SDI converter to the monitor. And a lot of this is because we've done so many Hangouts that was just kind of a very common thing to do. And that was pretty much it. And then it was what you don't see here. What you don't see here is there's an ATEM Mini, that was there. That's off the camera. So the camera went into the ATEM Mini, and the ATEM Mini went into the. I planned to do a bunch of those and didn't. So anyway, so that's the flow. That's how I put it together. Any questions about that? Go ahead, John Middleton.
That's actually a lint roller there also.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know where the lint roller came from. It was, we just kind of sat down and started. The lint roller wasn't mine. So, yeah. So that was, but it was a pretty quick setup. I hadn't really, I just kind of threw it together. But I think overall it came out pretty well as far as, dynamic range and so on and so forth. Any other questions?
Was your framing artistic or in a hurry?
Well, I was wrestling with the frame.
Yeah.
So I wrestled with the frame. I wasn't super, and in the end, I would have moved him more to the center. What happened is that I wanted to frame. Straight on to the, straight on was really boring, I thought, and there was a lot of stuff with the windows. So I wanted to move him at an angle, but then when I moved him over, like the wreath was around his head like a halo. And so when I moved him over, it was weird for me anyway. And it wasn't enough out of focus to make that work. And so then I moved him over to the side and so I was starting to become conscious that it was starting to get late at his house. And I was asking him to get up early. So I was like, oh, this is pretty good. And I wanted to show the fireplace. So I didn't want him to sit over top of the whole fireplace. And as you turn the camera, there was other things that in the living room that weren't as interesting. So it was just like one of those things. Like I got myself into a couple pins. If I had spent another hour or two, I probably would have done something different. But it was like 9 o'clock at night.
And it was stunning. No, trust me, that huge fireplace. And that,
yeah.
I was like, I assume that's a gas fire because
yeah.
you burned up a lot of logs.
Yeah. No, it was great. Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I think I commented about that yesterday also. I think that the huge fireplace really lent a complete atmosphere to this thing. And it set him apart. And it completely goes with who he is.
Yeah.
And I think it sold the whole thing.
Yeah. So I
thought it was really good.
Yeah, I wanted to see it there, and I just couldn't quite figure out how to center him and center it. Like there was just like a lot of weight issues of visual weight issues that I was trying to manage. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, the only thing it was missing was a little rocking chair off to the right side with a little wreath on it.
Yeah, I think he has a rocking chair somewhere in that living room too, and I just didn't move it in. I should have. He's got so many interesting things in the house that there was a lot of options that we just. Had I gone in a day before and really spent a whole day there, I probably would have dressed it, with some of the stuff because he's got so many cool things in the house. Go ahead, Mickey.
It was the image was at least how it came across through Zoom was pretty warm. Was that intentional or was that Zoom's warm?
Zoom makes it a little warm, and it was a little warm. I mean, I intentionally made it a little warm, but Zoom makes it a lot warmer than it needs to be. And I didn't error correct quite enough, but I felt like I didn't want to err on the cool side, for this one. If I was going to err it, I was going to err a little warm. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, as for the centering thing, with a guitar, that just makes the difference, a different feel or different area because the guitar neck is out there, so the center is not really the head; it's where the neck strap is. So you're kind of center on that, and it was a great shot. I wouldn't have changed the thing. I wouldn't have.
Yeah, and so I have to go back. I had of course dreams of taking that real quickly and cutting that clip out and putting it up on YouTube, but I didn't. I might do it today, like just the 6K. If I don't do it today, then we'll wait because there are a couple things that I was left with after watching it was number one is that it would be really fun for him to do kind of an acoustic album, like a MTV Unplugged from his house, next year. Like next year we do where he plays all the songs and he talks about them and takes this to the next level of what we did. And the second thing is I didn't know most of that. So he's my neighbor. He did what is actually my favorite Christmas song. Like my family, we grew up with pretty dark humor. And so it is my favorite song, from Christmas. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing to say or not. So I was really excited to do it. What I didn't know was how hard he worked at it. Like, all the stories that he told about what it took to get it, it started as a lark and then just became something that was pure will. I had a whole different respect for my neighbor after you find out like how much it was just pure gumption. There's so many of us there's so many ways that song could have just been kind of kind of an oddity that kind of came and went. And, you could just see a fork that people without the same level of internal drive to do it would have, and you got to remember he was 45 44, 45 when he recorded it. So he's had a business, he's had a life, he's had a lot of things. And then, the Middle Ages, he'd be at the end. And then he took it and created a whole new world, in the last 40 years with just an enormous amount of push. Go ahead, John, and then Courtney.
I was just saying, I read the Wikipedia thing, but it was like, there's so much more I want to know. The story about the Tower Records and the drugstore was amazing.
Yeah.
It's just, and the running, and, at 84, I'd like to be doing the mile and what he did it.
By the way, kudos to Bill. When we got off the air, you did a great job, Bill. Just really, really well done.
You bring somebody that interesting in.
Well, it was really important to me because it was like I had really wanted to do the interview and I had prepped it all, and then I ended up realizing it was going to be too complicated with all those wires for Pam to try to run it. And so at the last minute, I handed to Bill and just handed him some papers, and so I really put Bill on the spot, and he did a great job. And Elmo came off air and said it was the best interview he'd ever had. Just so you know, like it was like he was like, I didn't realize you're going to have a great an interview. Or where does he work? And he was like, what are they going? Because he's on broadcast all the time, And he said it was the best one that he's had. And I think that was a mixture of Bill doing a great job as well as everyone else, asking questions and being part of that. And I just said there's a different kind of thing. And usually most people, he gets 3.5 minutes. He's like a fun thing to add to Good Morning America, not an hour of, and I think that's the opportunity that these hours provide, is to bring artists in and get to know them better than they ever get to, get known. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, Bill did do a great job. I never knew there was a trilogy of songs, and I wanted to know, when did he release the Sue Santa's Pants Off song? Was that more recently, or
it was
that
in the
part of
90s.
the album?
That was part of that album. Then they had to figure out, like, how do we keep capitalizing on this song, and Sue the Pants Off, I think, was, I like my favorite is actually the Fruitcake, Killer Fruitcake is a pretty good song. I was like, and I like them both. I mean, I now have to go back and get the album. I don't have the album. I just had the song. Go ahead, John Pruitt, and then John Ilson.
Yeah, I love the Fruitcake song, but I think that Sue the Pants Off might have had something to do with the suit he had to do to get some of this going.
It might
have been a life story.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, John Pruitt.
I was watching a Fox channel thing on American standards and how all of them were written in the 50s except for a handful. And the one song they didn't cover I consider to be a standard is Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. It's
Right.
dark, but it's now a Christmas standard in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, it is like, if you're going to have one hit, Christmas is the right hit to have. I was talking to an artist that had written, a pretty popular artist that had done a Christmas album, and they just said it pays more than all the other albums after the first 5 years. Like the Christmas, because the royalties just keep rolling in, and it's just like it's the gift that keeps giving, truly for the artist. If so, they didn't know how it would work now with Spotify, but it was one of the, Spotify had just started when I was talking about it this a couple of years ago. John.
So does that mean the goal for the Office Hours band is a Christmas album for next year?
Oh yeah. And we could, we have the ability to have the Office Hour band play with Elmo. Like he would totally, like, we could do a new one and like do some kind of crazy thing with Elmo. I'm sure that would be a possible
Think of all the locations we could be from.
Well, and Elmo did point out, he's like, hey, if you want to do more of this, he goes, I know some people that will come play, at the house, so I was like,
After all those years of touring, I bet he knows everybody.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't know him, but the other person, there's two other bands or two other artists or bands that are very close in Northern California, in San Rafael. And so the two that come up are Carlos Santana, is in San Rafael, and Metallica. Metallica is in San Rafael. Their warehouse that they rehearse in is was about 2 blocks from my old office, so 2 or 3 blocks from my old office. Yeah. So you couldn't, I never went over there, but we did some stuff with them. And so we knew where it was. So anyway, a heavy metal version of Jingle Bells would be kind of fun.
How about Grandma got ran over by a Tesla on autopilot?
There we go. Go ahead, Mickey. And Elmo has a Tesla, so there's some way we could cut that in. Anyway, go ahead, Mickey.
Have any of you guys seen the documentary or heard the group called Playing for Change?
Mm-mm.
They basically go around the world and record buskers around the world and essentially do like a huge multi-track recording of all these buskers around the world and shoot a video of each one and cut it together. And like doing something like that here would be pretty cool. I will say that one thing I was talking to my wife about yesterday was how much fun it would be to do a documentary about Grandma got run over by a reindeer. So I think that there might be a possibility of, I'm thinking like an office hours kind of people interested in playing. And we do that, we kind of do it as a group project. We have a year. So anyway, we'll talk more about that. Cause I think that it would be really, I'm fascinated by the again, the story was so much better than I knew until when he said it. Go ahead, Sky.
I guess I was feeling into that. I'm listening to a man that's 84, and it's like I would have never expected to have a relationship or a friendship with somebody of that age and that energy. And of course, that's what I'm doing with Graham Kerr. But again, the knowledge, the experience, the wisdom, it's magical, and it's a good, healthy way of our elders passing.
I will say he's a great neighbor too. Like that's part of why it turns out he's actually really nice, and they check in all the time if they're going to do it. They're constantly working on the house, and so they're always checking in on, like, can we cut these trees down? And I'm like, as long as you cut them into log length. Is my whole thing. Don't split them, but cut them into log length. Then I'm fine with cutting down those trees.
Then you'll teach your kids how to split them.
Oh yeah, no. I should show you videos. My kids are splitting them now. I got my daughter a smaller axe, and she's good. Jeffrey.
Yeah, it'd be kind of fun to actually do remember the '80s type things where we're not looking at the camera and we're just reminiscing what songs and like with Peter Himmelman and some of the other artists that we've had on in this last year. It would be a lot of fun. I wanted to do that actually. I had a podcast called Day in Tech History where I wanted to bring in a whole bunch of tech people to do that same thing. Yeah. I'd be up for spearheading something like that.
Let's think about that. It also had me, the quality of it was so high, especially through the camera, that I kind of want to figure out if I can put together a remote kit like the ones that we've just used. This kit is very similar to the one that we've been sending out, 6K camera. And I was thinking it'd be really cool to have 1 or 2 of those that we can send to artists. So like when Peter Hillman comes on or somebody else comes on, we're not capturing them through Zoom. I mean, they're interacting with us through Zoom, but we're capturing at 6K, with really high quality audio. And then posting that, piece later. Go ahead, Grant, and then John.
I'm just riffing off the fact that you talked about guys doing Christmas songs. The song that Victor and I did, "Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire," was written by Mel Torme, who is a Jewish guy in California, right? sitting in hot California, writing this song about chestnuts roasting on an open fire, and then has the gumption to call it the Christmas song. Right. This Jewish guy is like, okay, yeah, let's call it the Christmas song. You think about how much royalties that song got.
One of the greatest crooners of his era, though. Man, that guy had a voice.
Yeah, Dreidels roasting on an open fire didn't have a ring to
it. Go ahead, Roscoe, and then John.
Yeah, in some ways it mimics It's a Wonderful Life, and the fact that airplay pays off. It's a Wonderful Life became famous because it went out of copyright, and so stations could just roll it, and it did, and people just started watching it. It wasn't considered a great movie when it came out.
I gotta say, I watched it last night with my kids. I watch it every Christmas Eve. My dad watches it. The family, like I think most of my extended family watches It's a Wonderful Life on Christmas Eve, and it is such a great movie. like every year. I mean, I don't watch it more than once. Maybe I watch it twice a year, but usually, I'll watch pieces of it. It's funny. I don't watch the beginning very often. Anyway, but I watch the whole thing on Christmas Eve every year, and there's so much in it that was just so magically well done, about life and about, being, a good person and the process and being conscientious and all the things. And there's things that are goofy about it, but there's so many things that are just such a good story. And I was really struck by it last night watching it with my kids that it's just an amazing, amazing story. And if you haven't watched it recently, it's worth throwing on. It's not that long.
Do you watch it in color or black and white?
Black and white. Never.
Oh, Courtney
He says with a certain
Oh,
indignance.
Roscoe.
Oh, like I saw 10 frames of it in color one time. It was an abomination. Like, like I was like, who did this? Ted Turner. That didn't go very well. It was an interesting idea, but no. John Pewitt and then John Adelson.
I'm going to point out one of our favorite holiday songs for a lot of people that they associate with Christmas was actually written for Thanksgiving, and that's Jingle Bells.
Oh,
I was talking about going to visit Grandma during Thanksgiving.
Right.
So.
Interesting. Yeah. John Adelson.
Yeah, I watched it in color this year, and I had to rewatch it again in black and white to clear my memory of that. But the thing I wanted to say is with Elmo, there's so much to unpack on that. A little throwaway line when he said, "And I didn't have to pay DJs to play the record." I think there are some of us without gray beards that forget when you only got airplay by going there and paying a DJ or getting the
payola scandals.
Yeah, and a lot. That's a long time since I've heard about that.
Yeah. John Preto.
1978 CES here in Vegas. There was 2 cars in between the Las Vegas Hilton and the Convention Center. One was the 1KW VW, had 1,000 watts amps inside of VW. And the other car was Mel Torme's Bentley that he had 1,000-watt amplifiers in his car.
It's great. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. I definitely want to do more with the artists and everything else next year. And I think that the other thing I do want to bring in folks. There's a couple folks that I know that have, were in the industry back then or have been in the industry, and I think it would be fun to talk through it. I have a friend of mine. They were basically the stringer folks for CNN in Washington, D.C. in the 80s. So as CNN ramped up, it outsourced all of its work. And I know the guy that owned the company that they hired to do all the DC stuff. And I think that the stories would be good. But I think that these to get back to what John was talking about, the little, like we should get people in that were, like Leo touched on a lot of that stuff in the 80s, when he was talking about what it was like. But I think getting some folks in so that we, on some days, we get a little understanding the history of what we do. So anyway, a lot of fun. We'll do it again soon. I am going to try to use the 6K version to get Carlos Santana to come on. We'll see if we can pull it off. Anyway, because I think that it went really well, and I think Elmo did a great job. So, we'll talk more about documentaries. I'm pretty serious about thinking about that. Anyway, next question.
John Pewitt has our second question of the morning from Huntersville. What item did you really want for Christmas but didn't get, so you have to pick it up on Boxing Day?
Does anyone have any items that they? Go ahead, TJ.
I was hoping to get the Lord of the Rings extended version on 4K, but it's now sold out everywhere. Wow. You can't get it.
Courtney?
I'm going to order myself the 15-button streaming bridge after seeing yesterday. So.
The Stream Deck, you mean?
Yeah, Stream Deck.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Stream Deck, not Streaming Bridge. Yeah, Stream Deck.
Good. Paul?
Yes, the same thing. Stream Deck, man. I'm so impressed with that. It'd be so cool just to have all those buttons where you could run macros and stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
Paul, you can have all of Mickey's mic presets.
All of your mics plugged into the Stream Deck.
Yeah, I could pick which mic, which camera, man.
I was trying not to go there. That was like, I was sitting there waiting. I was like, I wonder if we're going to get out of this without a mic comment. Anyway, but
I can't escape my comments. They're inevitable, especially from Preto.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, from this morning's pre-show, I think, well, I'm going to have to wait to see how Precore enters into the Peloton universe, but definitely starting to look at the elliptical. Thanks, Guy.
That's
How expensive are those machines? I heard they're really expensive, right?
I think the newest one's like 2,200, and then the old one, the Gen 1, on Black Friday was 1,800, and then there is a monthly fee as well, so it's like another $20. I'm still on the free monthly and the trial version, but so far I'm loving it, so I think I'm going to continue it. But I don't actually have the bike; I just have my elliptical and kind of pretending like I have one.
all right. Next question.
Moving on to Benjamin Antiput here from the panel in San Carlos, California. Guy, what is the DVE store Zoom room displaying? Generally speaking, which application?
This is Scopebox. Alex had mentioned the other day that he wanted to do this, and the things that keep you up at night. I just kind of engineered it out with the Apple iPad with the pencil and kind of drew it out. Look like this. If you want to spotlight that real quick, Mickey, it's basically, I just thought, what would it look like to have active speaker, gallery view, Zoom room pin, and then I was going to do it with NDI, and then I thought maybe I'll do it with a Dell and a Roland switcher, and then 2 old MacBooks, and then I wound up just going with option C, which was a Dell into an old MacBook 13-inch. So it's HDMI out in as the second display on the Dell, going into the MacBook, running Scopebox, and then the HDMI back out of the MacBook into the Dell on a USB capture card. And it's pretty simple now. And Alex, you want to walk through some of the scopes as to what they're doing?
Yeah, the vector scope is usually more useful when we put proper color charts up, because all that stuff matters. It does give you a little bit of a sense of color for skin color. You'll kind of see there, but waveform is the easiest way to do it is rock your head a little bit, Benjamin. Just rock your head. You'll see that's you, right? So that's your values in that. And so that is a what you're seeing there is it's scanning across the frame and showing you what the values are at each line.
Which one are we looking at?
Upper right,
the waveform.
Right,
the waveform. So the waveform is the overall luma. That is the sum of the RGB. The RGB parade is the waveform for each channel. So that shows you the individual RGB. So you can see, for instance, that when I look at this, I can tell you that your skin, which we already know looking at yours, is your red channel, and your red and green channel are both peaking. Your red channel is peaking a little bit, and that's flattening it out because you can see that line across the top. So it's peaking there, whereas the sky behind you, the blue is peaking. You'll see where the blue peaks and starts to hit it. There's red. So you start to play with it. Yeah. I find that the RGB parade and the waveform for me are the most important in that process. There you go. You have some color there, and you can start to see it. What's really useful is to start to play with this, so that if you leave this up, and my goal next year is to have this up all the time, what will happen is your eye will start to understand what it's looking at all the time. Like it'll just go, oh, I see what that is. I know what that means. And you get to a point where you can look at the scopes, and I always joke with the when you look at scopes, it's like from the Matrix. It's like eventually it just becomes blonde brunette, and from the Matrix, and so that you get used to looking at the data, that's there and knowing what that means, and it's super useful for getting things corrected quickly. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, notice that the waveform is not peaking, but that the RG parade is, and that's something that you really need to pay attention to, because the waveform doesn't tell you that.
Right, because the sum of all of those is not over 100, but each channel is, and what you'll see is you'll start losing data in the red channel or the blue channel or whatever. And so the RGB parade, if someone made me choose between a waveform and RGB parade, I would pick the RGB parade every day, because it's the most important scope in my opinion for what I do to make that work. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Is this why we would get a color card?
Yeah. So, those color cards, are designed like a DSC Labs Chroma Dumont chart is designed to be at very specific levels on those scopes. So you can it's calculated for that. The X-Rite ones are not necessarily calculated for that, but the video one, the DSC Labs one, is designed to be at certain levels across that, and so it helps you sync that up very quickly just with the numbers. Go ahead, John.
How much does software like this cost?
Oh, I think it's like $100. It's like $150, something like that. And there's other, it's in some apps, so you can look at it. In some, like I think Resolve has a lot of those built in, and you can do Resolve Live. In the Resolve, you can have a video feed in and hit. There's a Resolve Live if you're in the color pane, you can do Resolve Live, and you can see it. What's really cool about Resolve Live is that you can look at your live feed and you can add color corrections to it, and then you can save that out as a LUT. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, the X-Rite cards actually quantize. I can't use that word.
Quantize
to specific numbers, and so therefore Resolve or a good will look for those specific numbers and match those up. So it knows what a X-Rite color chart should be, and then it will actually look at those numbers as they're quantized.
Yeah. So the X-Rite definitely works with Resolve in post. I don't think it'll work live. So the live setting up your cameras,
right.
Is where you want something like a DSC Labs. But you're absolutely right that the X-Rite is kind of magical when you're shooting footage. You put that out there, and then you literally just there's an X-Rite setting in Resolve, or there's an X-Rite pane, and you literally just line up the square of X-Rite to the X-Rite thing, and it just pulls your whole camera in very quickly, which is pretty slick.
It's the fastest way to match cameras, and as your lighting conditions change, it nails it every time.
But you're matching cameras in post, right?
Correct. Yes, not live. Definitely in post.
But you wouldn't have to. Sorry, I'm just thinking about something else. You could use it to build LUTs to match your cameras. I hadn't thought of that before. Anyway, we'll play with that. Anyway, next question.
Talak Miguel Lopez Waterman has the next question from Queens. What, if anything, do you all use for a live video color grading, and how does that affect the computing power you need? Also, is there anything you need to use to add LUTs live, and do any of you do that with your video in office hours?
So right now I have I use an FSHDR. It's a piece of hardware to do that. You can definitely do it in other things that aren't, but that's built for it. That's AJA makes a thing called an FSHDR to analyze that, and I'm going to show it to you guys in a week or two. I just haven't. I need to get it all set up in my house or at my office. I got to decide which, but I have both of them sitting here right on the other side of my desk at the moment. But the FSHDR will take cube files and apply it to what's going through, and then I have a color front image analyzer that will show you. That's kind of Scopebox on extreme steroids, and so AJA has lent it to me to do some research. It's about a $20,000 box, so it's not like a, but that's what I'm using for the shows that we're working on, and that the FSHDR is not cheap either. But the $8,000, and we've got a couple of them because of the HDR work that we do. Go ahead, Roscoe. Oh, can't hear you.
My sync was perfect. Sorry about that.
Yep.
So for $9 in a webcam settings, you can do all kinds of stuff to just mess around with the I use a webcam C920, but it's webcam settings on the Mac, $9.
Oh, to color it, yeah. I mean, if you're looking at, and again, those are. I mean, what I'm doing is trying to push log information into PQ, so it's a different problem. But you can definitely shade the cameras live. When we're shading cameras live for most of these things, we're using the ATEM to shade the cameras, and so that's the. And I'll be showing again. I'm going to try to get some guys from AJA. The only delay on scheduling this is having someone from AJA come in and talk to us about it. But the most of the shading that I've done in the last decade or last 5 years has been all on AJA, not AJA, Blackmagic switchers and Blackmagic cameras. I don't think that there's any other great way to shade live. I mean, there's lots of shaders, but within the realm of, I mean, it's just so simple. and the shading solutions inside of the switchers just keep getting better. So yeah, go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, any professional camera would usually come with a CCU, which was the shading box. So you have to think in terms of when you step up to the right gear, it does shade live.
No, it does. It's just that for most of us, the right solution. I mean, there's live shading units, and we can at some point bring a shader in and talk about it. But it's the fact that it's now become something that is so accessible to all of us is kind of amazing. That you can buy a $2,000 camera. The shading units cost more than $2,000.
Right.
So the thing is, like, the shading, just the box that controls the cameras is like $5,000. So the fact that you can buy a whole camera that can be shaded and then shade it with a $300 piece of hardware is amazing. I just want to point that out. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, yeah, and the other thing is you can learn it. You can get DaVinci Resolve, which is free, and actually learn all. You have all the controls right there.
Yep. Yeah. So. And we'll dig into it, a lot of that next year. Next question.
John Pruitt of Huntersville and the panel says, I've noticed Mukana starts playing YouTube automatically. Is this something that was changed by you or Google?
Chris may have changed the embed to do an automatic autoplay. And if you did that, I got to talk to him because it'll screw up our stats. Because YouTube, if you do autoplay on YouTube on your web page, it doesn't register the person as a viewer. It just says, oh, that doesn't count. So go ahead, John.
Yeah, it kind of disturbs me when I'm on the panel because I'll be listening to you on Zoom and then I hear a 3-second delay or 6-second delay of you starting to talk again. And then I have to figure out which tab is coming from. Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it's probably just a setting there. I don't think that I didn't remember. I don't think that YouTube's changed anything, but we'll see. Yeah. Next question.
And James Babbitt from San Diego here is back with, hey, Alex, what lights are you using for your backlighting today?
So the lights that I have available to me that were sitting around that do color are Nanlite mix 60s. I think they're called. They're mix 60s. That is incredible overkill for your color lights in the background. It's just that I've been playing with lights a lot. So my front lights right now are the 100Bs that I was just using over at that I just changed out yesterday because I'd used them at Elmo's, and so I'm using them here. And so I'm constantly shifting my key lights between the compact 68Bs and the 100Bs, and playing around with image size, light size and intensity and so on and so forth. I have to build a bunch of these for executives next year, like, I don't know, 30 of them over the next year. And so a lot of executives, just in case you're wondering, a lot of them are not going back, to showing up in person. Like a lot of them they want to get the energy of the crowd or whatever, but a huge number of them are like, I just want this to work in my office, in my house, and I wanted to have one in my office and one in my house, and I never have to. There's a certain number of CEOs that are extroverts, so they want to go out and be back on stage, and then there's a whole lot of them that like to manage events and are introverts, and they don't ever want to go in front of a lot of people again. so there's enough business to build these kits because they want to do that, and so I'm kind of, you'll notice that within a certain range, my setup will change almost all the time because I'm trying to figure out the best mics and the best lights and cameras and so on and so forth to send out. Anyway, so the mix 60s, I think so. They're mix panel 60s. I have like 4 of them that I've been using for other things, and so I just threw them back there to throw some light up. But again, that's painful overkill. I've got some cheaper ones that probably in my that I use for my kids' fun stuff that are probably $50 each. That would be just fine to do this. Go ahead, John.
They have DMX on those, Alex?
Oh yeah. That's part of. I'm gonna use. It's actually I'm using them to do the DMX testing, the remote DMX testing. So all the kits that I'm designing are all going to have DMX, and so we're going to use the ArcNet, and and I want to be able to control part of the remote kits that I'm building. All have to be, every piece of equipment that goes in has to be remote controllable. So we've got Wingman is controlling the mix pre. The ATEM or the camera software is controlling the camera. Pan tilt zoom is still something that I'm probably going to build from scratch. I think I showed it earlier that I got my motor. So I got the motor and I got the controller. I haven't taken it further than that just yet. So I'm going to get a couple of those and build a new kind of pan tilt zoom that's less expensive and actually more robust for what we need it for. And then the light speed DMX is important. And so there's a couple bits and pieces that I'm trying to figure out there. And the goal is to get to a point where it could be a shotgun and a speaker, which we've used in the past, but using AutoMix to do that. But it's so tweaky that I'm not sure if I'm going to use it yet. It's really hard to get it perfect. I mean, even when Brian's on every once in a while, you see that, you hear a little bit of the return and he's using it and he's really good at it. And so, I'm a little hesitant to use that, but it would be sure nice for a lot of executives to be able to just sit down and start talking and then have it sound amazing. So I'm still working on that part. Anyway, but that's what, to make a short story very long, it's the mixed panel 60s in the back. I'm just a little embarrassed that I'm using them for what I'm using them for. It's like, it's the same thing as like the Scorpio that I have that I'm using for my mic is embarrassing. And, it's an embarrassment of riches, to be using it for what it's being used for. Anyway, next question.
Moving along to Chris Comfort in New York asks, does an inexpensive interface like the TechRise give a significant increase in quality over the laptop's built-in headphones and microphone jacks?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, the Macs don't have a built-in microphone or headphone jack, so we need it for the mic. We need it for the mic input.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. If you've got a PC that has mic input, it shouldn't be any different than getting a TechRise. You just plug it right into the PC. Yeah. Next question.
John
Go ahead, Benjamin.
Oh, just real quick. What's the difference between having a mic input audio out splitter, just a 3.5 4 ring option versus a TechRise kind of a thing, via USB?
Say that again.
You can get a little Y cable that does a 3.5 millimeter to 3.5 millimeter female that'll split the mic input and the speaker out. I'm kind of curious what the difference is between that and a USB tech.
I think it's just a matter because that one has that still goes into the computer on a Mac. It doesn't know what to do with that. I don't think it still needs a USB interface. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. Most of them use the same chipset, but the difference would be if you have to use an extension cable or something, it'd be better to extend the USB cable than it would be to run a long, unbalanced microphone cable into your computer. So the TechRise will give you an extension that'll get it closer to your headphones and microphones so that you don't have to run a long, unbalanced cables into the microphone input of your computer.
Unbalanced runs are evil, and the longer they get, the more evil they become. Bill and then Mickey.
Yeah. Also remember that these schemes, like you get tip and sleeve connectors, you get tip ring sleeves, you get tip ring sleeves where they have 4 connectors on the end of a small 3.5 millimeter, and anybody can design a circuit that wires those things for anything. And in fact, a lot of the headsets that do stereo headsets and a microphone will have that 4 connector plug wired a specific way for headsets. That same plug plugged into another outlet will function differently. So it's kind of important to make sure you kind of know what's on each side coming in and going out to get everything connected correctly.
Mickey?
Yeah, exactly. Headsets wired. They're headsets that are wired for Apple devices and also ones that are for Android, and they switch where the microphone pin is at. And also, specifically for Apple devices, they need to have a resistor bridged across the microphone line and also ground. And that's how they detect that there is a microphone plugged in. So if you don't get a cable that is specifically for Apple devices and that doesn't have that resistor, then it's not going to work. So it's a little trickier than just say having a little dongle where it's clearly marked, this is microphone, this is, headphones.
Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then John.
Yeah, and with the TechRise, you have a little bit of passive power coming through there as opposed to the headset, which there might be a little bit of power, but just less than what the TechRise would have. The only downfall of the Tech Rise that I see is it's got a volume knob, and sometimes those volume knobs start to die out after a while.
Good, John.
I was going to say that I really enjoy having the volume knob on the Tech Rise because in a lot of Zoom calls that aren't this one, the volumes are inconsistent. And so I'm able to turn up and down people a lot easier using the Tech Rise. And I use it not for the microphone because I'm using this Heil PR40, but I'm using it for the headphones.
Go ahead, John. John Preto.
Did anybody else hear about 6K buzz from Benjamin, other than myself?
I didn't hear it. Go ahead, Benjamin. Can you turn your mic on?
Yeah. Check. Hello.
Oh, I do hear it.
Oh, I have an interesting.
But it could be a
Sounds
fan.
like a fan.
You have a fan?
How's that? Is that a little better?
Do you have original audio?
No, it sounds electronic.
Okay, I'll check it out. Thank you.
No, do you have original audio on?
I just turned it off.
Still there.
I have my still here.
Headphones,
Okay.
Bluetooth.
It's not horrible. It's not horrible. I
I
wouldn't worry about it.
I bet there's a computer fan. I'll check it out.
Okay, cool. Go ahead, Mickey.
Oh, sorry. No, I left my hand up. Raised,
okay.
I forgot to put it down.
Next question.
Moving along, John Pruitt of Huntersville asks, I'm going to watch Wonder Woman later today. Is anyone else watching anything interesting today? Well, last night.
Go ahead, Bill.
So last night, my wife and I watched The Greatest Showman on ABC. They had done this, and I'd seen it twice in the theaters because we really enjoyed it. And I think we're going to make that a Christmas tradition. And it's mostly because of the music. I think they did such an amazing job.
Really
the two
well
young
done.
men who composed that. And, one of the plot points, one of the minor ones, Jenny Lind, the famous actress of that era, is going to perform. And they hold off. I mean, Hugh Jackman as P.T. Barnum has never heard her and puts her on stage in front of a huge audience. And so you build to this plot point that's gigantic. And when the song comes, it's got to deliver. I mean, this has to be one of the most fabulous songs you've heard because they built her up into this incredible character. And I was just astonished at how fabulous a job they did of nailing those kind of things in music. It's fabulous.
The interesting thing about that song specifically is there are two words in that song that changes the entire meaning. And if you don't hear those two songs, it took a long time to realize what that song means because there's almost as an aside, there's two words that are said, and I'll let you guys listen to it. I won't tell you what it is, but there are two words that flip the entire song, and it's said as almost an aside, like almost a breath in. So the whole song sounds like one thing. That you're never going to be satisfied, you're never going to be whatever, and the two words that are in there flip the entire meaning. I just think that's a masterful part of that song. I really like the song, and it and Hamilton have kind of turned me towards musicals a little bit more. I used to joke that I would like musicals a lot better if it wasn't for all that singing. So the two that have kind of had me rethink that are Greatest Showman and Hamilton. Go ahead, Paul Terry Wallace. Paul Wallace. Sorry, I was just starting reading.
You can use all my names. It's okay.
Paul.
We watched The Midnight Sky with George Clooney a couple nights ago. Really spectacular sci-fi space thriller. Took place in the Arctic, I think, somewhere with the radio telescope. I like long range communications. Tonight we're going to watch Robert Rodriguez's sequel to The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lake Lava Girl called We Can Be Heroes. He's one of our local filmmakers. And then we've been watching a series called Virgin River, which is kind of a romantic, kind of cool, it's kind of two seasons, about 14 shows.
It's a chick flick.
Chick flick. Chick flick. That's what it is.
Paul, do they still do Q-Fest in Austin?
What? Q-Fest?
Yeah, you haven't heard of it. So
no, there's something I haven't heard of. How can you know something I don't know about Austin, Alex?
So Q-Fest, Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez they had a thing called Q-Fest that would happen around South by Southwest, and it was like basically Quentin Tarantino's favorite movies from the 70s, and watching it just watching it had me always like, you totally get Quentin Tarantino's movies after you watch these. They're these crazy biker movies and crazy 70s whatever, but it's really fun. You sit out on a lawn and there's a projection on a big screen, and you're just drinking beer and watching it on a blanket, and it's very, very Austin. But yeah, I don't know if I didn't know if they were going to keep on doing it or not. And when you brought up Rodriguez, I was just thinking about that.
They had a great Dazed and Confused reunion at the Moon Tower. It's this big thing. It was an incredible event.
Jeffrey, and then Greg, and then Courtney.
2 movies I watched last night. One was we bought and watched Tenet. And then my holiday movie, my Die Hard movie.
Wait, I just have to ask you, when you watched Tenet, did you watch it with or without the subtitles?
Without, but we're going to watch it again. We're going to watch it again.
If you haven't watched Tenet, try to watch it without the subtitles, and try not to be frustrated, and just be with the fact that it's all done on purpose. And the director, for some reason, my mind has turned off for a second. But Christopher Nolan believes that he can tell you the story without you necessarily understanding what everybody's saying. And he does it on purpose. And so what I didn't do with Tenet, and we had a long discussion. I'm in a group that is all like ex or current ILM and Pixar and Digital Domain and stuff like that. And we had this long discussion about that movie. And I felt like I kind of shorted myself by not trying. I got about 10 minutes into it and just turned the subtitles on. I was just like, I want to know what's going on. And I wish I had just listened. If you haven't watched Tenet yet, my recommendation is to watch it once. You're going to want to watch it a couple times. It's like, Inception. So you're going to want to watch it a couple times anyway. Just watch it without the subtitles. Don't even strain. Just be with the movie. And then watch it again with subtitles. That'll be your next layer of onion to undo. But I would recommend not trying. I've made the mistake. He's been going this direction for a while, and rather than resist it, there's a lot of folks that I talked to that said, don't resist it. It's actually a really good experience, is just to watch it, because you'll get it. You'll get the plot lines no matter what. And he goes, then it makes the second view much more fun, because you start digging in and you see the things that didn't quite make sense. But you don't need it to make sense.
Within the first 15 minutes of the movie, we were trying to note certain things where Chekhov's guns could come into play or not, and then we just kind of suspended that after a while. Second movie, really quick, is my Die Hard movie for Christmas. Actually, is the movie Casino, and the reason why is because I've watched it every Christmas Eve that I went to before I went to CES. So it kind of became my pre-CES movie. So it became a regular movie for me to watch.
So Jeffrey, I grew up with all those guys in that movie.
Yeah, and it was fun to watch what I know, like the old Riviera and the Plaza and stuff like that. So I've been there.
Go ahead, Greg.
Oh, see, you were talking about the outdoor theater thing, and I was just going to say that they do that every year at the Maui International Film Festival. So one year we're going to have to go out there, and it's out on the golf course, and it's every night, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I'm slowly turning my, I have a very small yard. That's just about the size of a smallish theater. And I've got a screen and I've got a projector, and now I'm working on getting the speakers. I'm not going to leave them out there, but the idea is to get, of course, I want to do 5.1. 5.1, in the thing, and hope my neighbors don't get too upset. I'll do it at a proper time, but you have to do it kind of in the winter, so it's not too late. Like, it gets dark. What's nice about it right now is that it gets dark, so you can play a movie at 5 o'clock or 5:30, and it's a good time to do it. And the mistake is you always want to do it in the summer, but then you're playing it really late. Go ahead, Sky, and then Courtney.
White Christmas. If for no other reason, Bing Crosby's from Spokane, Washington, where my daughter went to college. And so there's a lot of different connections, but more importantly, we watched it as a family.
That's right.
And so now we have that shared memory together. And I appreciate that. That's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Courtney?
And great music.
Yeah, Q-Fest. We don't have to have a Q-Fest here because Tarantino owns the old Beverly Cinema, which is a couple of blocks from here, and he plays all of his old favorite 35 millimeter prints in it until they closed it for COVID. So we're waiting after COVID, he's going to open it back again.
That's awesome.
One movie I'm looking forward to seeing, which I think opens today, is Soul, the new Pixar. animated film. But I think it's only available on Disney Plus, which I don't have. So too bad. Maybe I'll get a screener of it because I'm on the nominating committee this year. So getting lots of independence.
I do plan to watch both today with the kids. That's the big thing is we're going to sit down and watch both those movies. Steve and then John. Hope you're muted.
I don't know, for whatever reason in our family, we watched the Pink Panther on Christmas Eve, which is great fun and just hilarious, and just gets the family all rollicking and warm on that. But Peter Sellers last night just had me in stitches. I don't know how many times I've seen it, but he's fantastic.
I haven't watched the Pink Panther in so long. I have to.
The original, the first one is just great one.
Steve, does your dog bite?
That is not my minky.
that is not my dog.
My dog.
That is not my minky.
John.
I can't get through the season without my wife having me watch Love Actually twice.
There's a plot. I'm not gonna get into it. There's a plot line in there that makes me so upset that I won't watch it. And so there's anyway, how the husband handles that situation makes me so upset I can't watch the movie. TJ.
The greatest Christmas movie of all time, A Christmas Story, and I will fight you to defend that honor.
It is good. It is a great movie. So I haven't watched it in a couple of years, but I've definitely watched it at least 20 times. So it's I
have a leg lamp in my living room window
you talked
all
about that.
year long.
That's great. Yeah. So
You're not married.
I will say that.
My wife fought it for a year.
If we want to talk about any of these films, I've decided that it's a 1 week grace period, and then they're fair game. So so you get 1 week to watch them. Otherwise, don't come. If we start talking about it, it's your own fault. You didn't watch it. So you have 1 week before we start talking about Soul, and 1 week before we start talking about Wonder Woman. Especially now because you can just watch them. Spoiler countdown is 1 week. I had to decide what it was going to be. There was some discussion about 1 day, and I decided to give people a little bit more than 1 day. It may get shortened to a little less than 2 or 3 days because you don't have to go to the theater anymore. You can just go watch it. The only thing I take exception to, I will say, is that the rental for $19.99, it's not going to fly. I think that's going to be seen as just a disaster. I mean, there's stuff on Apple TV showing up at rent it for $19.99. I'm like, if I'm paying $19.99, I want to own as much of it as you own with an Apple product, but I don't want to have to pay for it to watch it again. And so I think that and especially with HBO Max and Disney Plus, just putting them on there, I don't think that's going to go. Go ahead, Chris.
You mentioned we're going to discuss Mandalorian tomorrow. Is that correct?
Tomorrow.
Okay.
Game.
I have a lot to
game.
say about that. So
yeah. So we'll talk. We'll be discussing Mandalorian tomorrow in the first hour.
Good.
Yeah. Someone has to ask the question because we don't have agendas, but if you ask the question, Mandalorian's fair game tomorrow.
Does that mean we have to go back and watch the entire?
You don't have to, but we're going to talk about whatever. Though the season's been over now for over a week, so if you might have, maybe that's what Bill's going to be watching today is Mandalorian.
Season's over. What?
Yeah. But soon, according to Disney, we will. I think where they're going is basically there'll be a Star Wars series going on all year. I think that's where we're kind of the flow that they're trying to get to is that there is no 8 weeks of Star Wars and then we have to wait. There'll be the Obi-Wan and there'll be the Boba Fett and Mandalorian and all the other things that are there. And I'm totally behind that. I think that if I had a show that I got to watch that was Star Wars related every week, I'd be fine. Next question.
Joe Marie is a first timer, I think. I'm trying to add a ticker, a random number generator from 1 to 300 on my Wix website. Any suggestions?
A ticker? Oh, Adjua. Hi, Adjua. I'm trying to add a ticker, random number generator.
On a Wix website. Wix is one of those.
Wix is like Squarespace.
Okay.
But it's just going to be something that's an embed is the idea. The part that I don't understand is the random number generator portion of it. Go ahead, John.
Couldn't you just write a JavaScriptlet to generate a random number on page load?
I'm just curious about why you need a random number generator is the part that Audra, if you can ask that in a different way, maybe put a little bit more explanation into it. I don't quite understand what you need it for. I think we just need, I think she's looking for something that is that is not something she has to write, but something that, like, is there someone that has something that can be an embed code that would go in? Yeah,
We
go
did
ahead,
that
Benjamin.
for little users group raffles and stuff like that. That's
Oh,
why a random
there you
number
go.
generator. So yeah,
Go
we
ahead.
got 300
I just
people here.
I'll throw a
who's
link
gonna
in
win.
Mukana. Hopefully
Okay.
that helps.
Great. Perfect. All right. Next question.
Ron of West Michigan says, what's the future of Mukana? Is it something you'd like to monetize or have it get acquired? I see some great application for it in K through 12, teachers, professional development, and higher ed sessions. I'd love to see how it evolves, and I definitely pay for it.
Yeah. So we're working on getting the admin tools done so people can start to use it on their own. And so there'll be pieces of that hopefully done in the next, in January. It's just been a little bit of a process to get it so that someone else can use it other than us. And so, it's just a matter of building out those admin tools. And so, and then the first thing we want to do is get it to a point where people can use it and give us feedback and start plowing into it. And I'm not worried about making money with it just yet. We do customize it for clients right now. So if you looked at like the Dolby Summit, that's a skinned version of Mukana where we, build it out to look like what they want it to look like. And so we use it inside of other events. And there's a service cost to customizing it, making it build for that. But making it more available to schools and organizations that want to run events is going to happen over next year. And the first step is getting the admin tools finished. There's a lot more to Mukana than just Q&A, but it's kind of the pointy end of the stick. Anyway, next question.
John Pruitt of Huntersville is in asking the important Christmas Day questions. Where did Courtney get his Santa hat effect?
The Santa hat effect or the Santa hat?
Courtney can pull up.
Just go under video filters and you'll scroll.
There you go. John Edelson got there
is
first.
in.
There we go.
Get that. You got the antlers.
It's in Zoom.
Yep, in Zoom.
And
good to know.
This has been a case for whether it's Zoom or Facebook or Google Hangouts. Every time I see a feature like a hat like that in antlers, I think of all the features I'm not getting because that feature was worked on. Because they put these stupid things in, I don't have X, Y, and Z. That's all as a person who uses all of these platforms for regular serious things. The bane of my existence is those little things.
There's been
I'm
many
like,
dinner
that was
discussions about that at the Idelson house.
Just
I think
wasted
Roscoe
programmer
wins
hours
with the 3D glasses and hat combination.
Yeah.
That looks pretty
See
good.
now,
had
I
NDI.
think Greg's hat effect is the best one. Like he's got, look at that. That hat tracks so
He is
well,
fabulous.
and the edges, the rendering is amazing. It just like looks like it's on his head. It's truly amazing.
Zoom should have done.
I got
physics
lucky.
Models so that when you
I got lucky. That's all it is.
That beard looks really realistic as well.
I know the beard is amazing. I mean, you got the whole. Greg, I do think that you could turn you could turn your whole December into just showing up in people's Zooms and have people tell you what they want.
I'm amazed the tracking is perfect on the beard too. Not a hair.
Yeah. No, I got lucky. They had all it came as a kit, of course.
Oh, right.
And it says the name of the company was like Traxwell or something like that.
Uh-huh.
So it probably I thought it might be okay. And yeah, I've done
People
that.
are going to be doing Google searches.
I don't know if I could listen to endless streams of people telling me what they want. I'll tell you what you're going to get. You're going to knuckle sandwich. That's what you're going to get.
That would be the best thing, is bringing you in and having Grumpy Santa. I think Grumpy Santa, there's a whole thing in there. It comes in your Zoom. Yeah, what do you want, kid? And then people are asking, and he goes, you know what you're going to get? A ham sandwich. I'm going to send you a ham sandwich, or I'm going to give you a lump of coal. Have you really been good? Because and if you could work on it, I think that would be a whole shtick. I think
You
that
lost
would
Grumpy Cat. You could be the next big thing, Greg.
as a little faculty project over here, we did a little short a couple of years ago. Same kind of thing. Me wandering around town. I go to the ATM. There's no love at the ATM. It's like, card refused, whatever, this and that. Go to go wander past some windows, some kids in a restaurant. It was pretty funny. But I'm sorry, you guys, I gotta go.
All right, thanks,
love
Greg.
you,
Merry
love
Christmas.
you all. Really,
you all.
really, really, really do. Having a great time, and have a great holiday today. And we'll
All right,
see you
thanks,
tomorrow.
Greg. All right, see you tomorrow.
Bye.
On Dasher, on Dancer, on Prancer.
Alex, it's very simple. Everybody's getting $600, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll get $600. Go ahead. Next question.
TJ Asher from the panel is asking everybody, did Santa bring anybody anything interesting?
It's still early. I don't know. Yeah, there you go. Stream Deck. Got a Stream Deck. Roscoe got something that I don't understand.
Tinker Toys. You can make anything out of these things. These are
Tinker Toys.
And I got the big one too. Look.
Yeah, those are bigger.
That's cool.
This is cool.
What's that? Oh, you don't know. What is it? We don't know. Yeah,
It is a thing on Facebook that is the monitor that will plug in. It's a 4K monitor that will plug into your iPad and your iPhone, and it's touchscreen. And I haven't opened it yet. Should I?
Yeah, you should open it. We should see
Okay.
it.
Well, I will mute.
If it's techie, we want to see it. Yeah, definitely mute.
It's very
There's
techie.
a lot of crinkly.
Sorry, so much crinkly.
Yep. Next. Let us know when it's opened. Next question.
Yeah, we'll drive back around. Jonas Dattel of Reutlingen is up next with, I have about 400 euros for my audio setup. What should I buy? I'll use it for streaming via my AMP and Zooming. ATEM Mini Pro is the AMP he's talking about. Also, I'm on a PC. So 400 euros audio setup.
Go ahead, Mickey.
I would actually go with the mic that Paul Wallace is using, the MV7. I think it's around 250 US, I believe. And you can run that on its own because it has a built-in interface, or maybe pair it up with like a. Alex isn't fond of the Scarletts, but maybe a Scarlett Solo, or even like the Motu M2. I believe is around 200 US, if I remember correctly.
While we're talking about this, I'm going to try a test here. I'll just see how this sounds. So this is going through a Scorpio right now. Let me. I'm going to unplug this because this could solve some of that. Hold on.
Here's that mic, but Sky's doing something way more exciting.
Did we lose Alex? You're not on. We're not hearing you. You
He's
don't
plugging
have
something in.
The
He's,
second
doing
mute
some
does not
changes.
show up here. No, you're still not coming through. So that reset did not reset the connection. It just disconnected you.
Guy, could you drop a link to that in Mukana for those interested when you have a chance?
So let's go to, was that Guy was showing something? Who I thought we're going to go to Sky next, but I want to see if we can get Alex back on audio before we do that. So I don't see Guy having anything there.
That didn't.
Guys, opening the box. Here he is, opening the box.
Is that Alex back?
Can you
Yes,
guys hear
yes,
me? Yeah.
you're on.
Okay, great. Desk Lab.
Ultralight portable touchscreen monitor.
Here we go. Here it comes.
And
it's not as sexy as an iPad.
Is it USB or is it connector?
I think it's everything. And it's got its own little self.
My last one from Kagoda has a USB, but it also has an HDMI, and you can adapt. Nice.
So the other ones that I'll be curious in your review of this does that little bottom part spin out? Is that how it stands? Is that a little stand?
No, it comes with a separate stand that you have to assemble.
So
and then the little sleeve that puts the whole thing together.
We haven't used that one. We've used a different one that's a competitor. The biggest problem we've had is that in the stand, when you tap on it, it vibrates and it makes you crazy. Like it's not solid. So that's the thing I'll be interested to know is how solid it is when you're tapping on it, because we've had trouble with it bouncing around. But I think it's a Lenovo that we've been using or something else. It hasn't been that one. So I'll be interested. But
it weighs like nothing, and it's so thin, and you can put your iPad and everything all together, and
Right.
it's 4K and touchscreen and something.
I will say, if you want something that'll mount it pretty stably, Ulanzi, U-L-A-N-Z-I, makes a pretty long mount that I found handles those size tablets pretty well.
I'm also waiting on small rig. They have a new expandable concept that will give you the 1/4-20 on the back, and then you can mount various things that are flat. So I'm waiting on that too.
Does it pull its power from USB, or does it have a separate wall wart, or how does it get powered?
USB, I believe. There's a power button on the. I can't imagine there might be a battery in there. To be determined.
It looks like there's a micro USB on the side of it. What type of connectors does it have? It was a little too fast for me to screen grab it.
There we go. Try that.
Two USB Type-C and an HDMI.
HDMI. Yeah. It's useful. So you can pass through it.
DisplayPort on the other side too, but maybe not.
Can you show us the brand name again, Sky? What's the brand name?
It is a Desk Lab.
Yes.
Desk Lab. Yeah.
Yeah, I put the link. It's $400 right now.
Yeah, that was the sell for me and it's 4K.
So it's touchscreen. What's the protocol, and what will it work with to give you touchscreen?
It just sends a mouse. It sends a mouse return back.
Yeah.
So it's just like you clicking. It's just like you moving your mouse. That works in a lot of things. So
and they say it's cross-platform, so it theoretically will plug into your Android, your iPad,
your
iPhone.
Cool. Yeah. Well, we wait for your review.
Yeah. I mean, a 15-inch iPhone. That's what you need. Put that in your pocket.
Yeah. There you go. Next question.
Paul Wallace is back again from Austin, Texas, with what are the ground rules for making clips off cable TV shows? Length, copyright, fair use, and so forth. What's fair game?
Depends on what you're doing with it, but technically, if you're just taking it and playing it back out or putting it up somewhere, there is no fair game. Like they'll come after you. And now with the new additions to, I don't know if people noticed what was added in this CARE bill or CARE Act or whatever, but these rats in DC added some copyright stuff into the current aid package that is truly draconian. No due process, they can basically, it's really horrible. I literally, the fact that they added it to an aid package I don't say things politically very much, but I've lost all faith in Congress, like all faith. Just that one little thing that they added, I'm like, they're all crooks. And I've never said that before. Like never had that, like, just really, you had to put that in there. Like, you hear about it all the time, but it literally, that one thing just shifted my whole brain away from Washington, D.C. in a horrible way. That they would put something in that is just, they've been trying to get this in for 8 years with SOPA and all these other things, and they decide to put it into an aid package, just really is perverse.
What does it do, Alex? What does it do?
So basically, if you stream something that is that someone feels is copywritten, they don't have to go to court to do it. There's now going to be a counsel or whatever that can basically come after you without due process, which means that what they'll do with that, the reason that that's so horrible is what they're going to do is they're going to go after people who do it, and they're going to basically shake you down. If you put any little bit of them, they're going to shake you down. They're not going to try to get the 30,000 or $250,000 or whatever they're going to go after you for. They're going to shake you down for $600, and people will just pay it because they don't have any way to protect themselves. It will become a lawsuit. It'll get turned over. Like the current Supreme Court is probably not going to put up with it. But it's going to be years of people, and as far as I'm concerned, everybody that votes on it should be voted out of office. Go ahead, John.
So, Alex, when you worked in radio, did you have a 12-second preamble like, AC/DC, or like, what's his name from LA had, Guns N' Roses as a 12-second preamble?
What do you mean by a preamble?
When they introduced his show, it would come on and he had Guns N' Roses playing. Tom Likas.
Oh, we didn't use that. I mean, we just had a show. Like we didn't use it for anything else. I mean, radio, you're paying for it already because you've got ASCAP and BMI. So you're already covered. For radio, you're always licensed. You can play it out, and you're paying for it. It's a known contract. Someone's got
those are called broadcasters blanket licenses, and all broadcasters hold them. And it takes care of ASCAP and BMI, and I think CSAC. So the three biggest.
Yeah, so that you're not. It's the online stuff, and I get that. I get that we need to protect copyright. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but I think that getting into this thing where you can go after people for money for small infractions, is just perverse. And it. I mean, you look at, again, It's a Wonderful Life. You look at those things of like what happens when. I mean, I think that the biggest thing is that I think the copyright would make a lot more sense if if it had been the way it was before the mouse. So, the mouse has been, the protecting Mickey Mouse has perverted the entire copyright system because they just keep on extending copyrights as opposed to saying, hey, some of it's going to go into public domain. After 50 years, it's going to go into public domain. And the reason that people in Hollywood don't want that is because the content is so good that at 50 years, we would stop watching current TV because there's enough old TV and old content and old music that we would just, people would just reuse that all the time, and they wouldn't use the new stuff. That's the problem, is that we got really good at making it. Go ahead, Courtney, and then Steve.
Yeah, we can thank Jack Valente for my beef is that there are things written into the copyright law that allow fair use, but there's no way to adjudicate it when you're pulled off the air by a bot that doesn't let you claim fair use. And also HDCP and all that copyright protection hardware that has been mandated to the electronics manufacturers to build into their equipment to enforce copyright for the studios, irregardless of rights at all, has been the bane of all of our video existence for the last.
Yeah, and you're right. You're absolutely right that if it was a fair process and an even process in a you're innocent until proven guilty process, then I would be fine with all the copyright stuff that they have there. It's just that they've wound it into this. So every time they turn the screw a little harder, it just really reeks of just goo. It's just gooey. And you just know that somebody's paying for it. Like it is public corruption. Like the copyright protection in Congress is public corruption at a mass scale. And I'm only talking about a political thing because it affects all of us. I won't get into other things, but what they're doing here is public corruption. It's people getting paid. These are representatives getting paid by the MPAA to vote for that process. That's why it's so unanimous, is because they're in everybody's pockets. And so we just have to know that this is a pure form of public corruption. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, and we have Sonny Bono to thank for that.
Yeah,
Sonny Bono was the one became a congressman in Southern California, and then passed the law working hand in hand with Disney in order to get that. Call it the Disney law. But Sonny Bono, we have to thank for it. Fair use, by the way, it's a real gray area, Paul. I mean, you wanted to play clips. Fair use. It could be a real legal nightmare. I mean, if a movie is in release, yes, you could use a certain amount of few seconds. Maybe I think it's up to 30 seconds. If a movie is in release, and you could use it for promotional purposes. But a movie that's out of release, and you start playing those clips, you could get into a lot of trouble on that stuff.
Go ahead, Bill.
I'm going to make it simple. You never have rights to show anything that you didn't create yourself. And in point of fact, we've heard stories a lot recently of people who have been the creator. It's like if Elmo, might get a takedown for Grandma got run over by a reindeer. even though he is some of the copyright holder of that, along with whoever wrote the original song. It is, as everybody has been saying here, a nightmare, and it's not going to get better anytime soon. You have to go into every piece of content you use, and if you don't have a clear line of copyright assigned to you, just don't use it. Use buyout, use something else, but don't use somebody else's work.
And by the way, I'm 100% behind copyright holders getting what they earn. People are making money off of their stuff. They should get paid for it, and they should get paid for it, for at least 50 years, but I'm not, it's this, like, we're going to turn everything into an automated system, and then we're going to go after it. And mostly when you're going after small people for money that is going to hurt, but they can pay. And it literally is just a shakedown. I mean, it's the mafia, coming after you. And it's being given the government okay to basically do mafia level shakedowns of individuals. It's just corrupt. It is, I know it seems like a little line item in a big bill that everybody needs, but it is the clearest form of public corruption that I've ever seen. And I'm just, I don't know what about it just really, just when I thought that I would come back to normal with politics, I'm completely now against them all. Go ahead, John.
Maybe we'll just go the way of the V chip.
It might. I mean, fundamentally, this show proves that there is a possibility of, again, I've said this before, but what we're doing here is the seed of something that wipes all of that out. Because we're interested in, if you let people aggregate around what they love, and they spend how much less time do we all spend watching TV because we spend it all here? Like we took our, and imagine if there was a thing like this for everything, like that we were interested in, like we would have to choose between all the interesting conversations that we had, and we'd still watch things we still watch The Mandalorian, we still watch other things, but we definitely wouldn't fill our time with junk TV, or anything else, because we would have real things to talk about. Anyway, next question.
TJ Asher, Minneapolis, is in with Santa brought me a new Feel World 7-inch 4K monitor, but unknown to both me and Santa, it does not have a power supply. They expect you to power it off your V-mount battery. It does take 12-volt DC power in with a 5.5 millimeter barrel style connector. Recommend that a 12-volt DC power supply for me that plugs into the mains.
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I don't have a store. Well, is this the TJ? The 4K ultra bright?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm running it off of my LaCie hard drive Wart right now. And it also runs off of these guys. What are these? 970 or something?
Yeah, that's Sony battery.
Yeah. So I have a bunch of these, and it can take 2 of them, but it will also run off of 1. So, but yeah, I don't have a store-bought Wart, but this one was just LaCie, and it's been running for the past 15 minutes because I was testing it to make sure. So,
Mickey?
Yeah. 5.5 mil connectors, that's outer diameter, with a 2.5 mil inner diameter. Those are pretty standard for 12-volt appliances. So yeah, like power supplies for routers and power supplies for hard drives will work perfectly well. But if you have a power supply that's 12 volts and can supply enough amperage, and you're handy with a soldering iron, this is the Switchcraft 760, and that's the exact size that you need to solder on.
And for those of you who kind of get into it, the main thing is a lot of us have to reuse Walwarts all the time. That's kind of like a common thing that you're kind of using. You lose the one and you get another one. The most important thing, I mean, TJ knows this, but this is for everybody watching, is that you match the voltage. Matching the voltage is super important. And then the amperage just needs to be higher than the device needs. It's not going to, if the volts are correct, it can be capable of amps that are much higher than whatever it is, but you have to match the voltage or bad things. If you underdo the voltage, it may not run. And if you overdo the voltage, it will kill your device. So yeah, it starts to get hot, and then it starts to smoke, and then it stops working. So those are things that are important. But otherwise, a lot of us mix and match stuff all the time. Bill and then Roscoe.
Yeah, there's only one of the little thing you have to pay a little bit of attention to. On the socket, there'll probably be a little line that comes out with a plus mark. That determines whether it's shield positive or the core is positive. So pay attention to that.
Yeah. So Roscoe, and then Chris.
And for those crazy people who like to make things not 5.5, but just slightly different size, red and blue nail polish is wonderful to mark the different connectors.
That's good. That's very good. Yeah. And one of the first things that I tend to do now is like, if you I was going to pull something out and show it to you, but then I realized that it would disconnect my audio. No, would it? Yeah. Disconnect my internet. Anyway. So, but when I get wall words, I tend to, one of my first things to do is print what it is out of my little brother cube. I type it in, I print it out. And that's part of my, like, I bought something new, is I put that in there, and it's very useful. Anyway, next question.
Talak Miguel Lopez Waterman is back from Queens with thank you so much. Quick follow-up. Can you shade on any camera with an A10 Mini Pro or just Blackmagic design gear?
Just Blackmagic. Like it doesn't talk to anything else as far as that goes. It's kind of a closed system, but man, is it great when you get it all set up. Like if you get Blackmagic cameras talking to Blackmagic switchers, it's a lock-in for a lot of people, like for me and a lot of other folks, that you can just, the fact that the switcher can shade the cameras is kind of magical, and it works really well. And again, it's a really great experience, given a lot of us have come from big CCUs that were talked about earlier, and expensive controllers, down to a $300 thing with a $1,400 camera that you can run is amazing. Roscoe.
Yeah, not all Blackmagic cameras don't work with all switchers. HDMI to HDMI shading for minis, SDI to SDI for the Ursas and above.
I believe that Blackmagic now has a converter that will go HDMI to SDI, so you can actually you can actually now do the control of the smaller, like the micros and so on and so forth, from the mini, but it requires a converter to do that. It does not work when you put the HDMI into the camera, into the micro. The micro has an HDMI cable, and that will not work. Chris?
Does it make sense to try to have some kind of rudimentary adjustments after the signal comes in? Or is it really only makes sense to do it remotely to the Blackmagic cameras like it does now? Like even just like taking some of the red out of your face, for example. Or
well, that's usually, usually I would do that through the camera.
Right. But if you couldn't do that, will it break it if there was a way?
You can pull it. You can use a proc amp, a variety of different kinds of proc amps to make some of those adjustments.
Okay.
Yeah. Next question.
Jonas Dattel is back from Reutlingen, Germany with, is there a Windows version of Scopebox?
There's not a Windows version of Scopebox. I'm not sure what the Windows equivalent of Scopebox is. I think that you could probably get it with things like SpeedGrade and some of the on-set stuff that Adobe makes. If you have that collection, there's some on-set solutions from Adobe that you can use that will give you some scopes. If it still runs Pixel Conduit, which is the app that we developed, I don't know if it runs on the most current Windows OS. There is a Windows version of it, and it has all the scopes in it, like for free. So we built them in because I used them on set, and it actually predates Scopebox. I don't think it runs stably on the current version of the Mac OS. I think it stopped working well on Catalina. But on a PC it may still work. Next question.
David Brady of New York asks, can anyone explain the use case for personal Zoom room versus Zoom room for shared spaces? Do they use up a Zoom room seat license?
I don't know, actually. I mean, the one thing I will say about personal rooms, just to be very careful of, is be careful of using personal rooms. like there's no use. I don't quite get the personal room thing, because this is using a personal room is a common thing to do, whether it's blue jeans or that you have a known thing that you can just constantly throw into things. But I have been in so many uncomfortable situations with people who use personal rooms all day, where I had one a couple months ago where I came into a meeting on time. There was another woman there that I didn't know, that was like, she had come at the wrong day to be in the meeting, but at the right time. And the person who runs the meeting was no longer was not there yet. They were late. They were in another meeting. So now there's two people that don't know each other that could have been competitors, could have been there's a whole bunch of things that could have happened badly there. That was just a collision. As it was just a really uncomfortable moment because I didn't know who she was and she didn't know who I was, and she didn't know the person, so she thought maybe I was the person that she was supposed to meet with. There was a whole bunch of like back and forth over it, and I was like, this is why I don't do this. I want a new meeting code for everything. I mean, I use my personal thing for tests, and I change it often. I change its code often because I don't want to keep on having something sitting around. But from my security side of it, I'm just like, this is a horrible idea. John, and then Bill.
I was just going to say, I use my personal code with my family because my sister can't ever remember the number, but that's the only one I use it for.
Right. Go ahead, Bill.
I thought the use case was like if you're in a group meeting with a few people and then you think, well, that person might be interesting to talk to about a job. We'll go over to this personal space that is aside that nobody else can listen to. And then you come back to the main thing. Was that the design idea or was it something different?
Yeah, I don't know. I think for shared spaces, it kind of makes sense that you just walk in. That's the code for that room, but it still feels really uncomfortable to have any kind of persistent. I know for Zoom rooms we use it but we change it for every show. We change the ID for every show to make sure that we don't have people from old shows showing up in new shows. Go ahead, Peter, and then John.
I was going to say this dates back to the days of conferencing bridge numbers, and I got into the habit of having three of them. 3 different bridge numbers so that you would never use the same one for the consecutive meetings. So you could have multiple.
Right.
And I carry that on with these. I yell at my team that if they ever use their personal rooms on our WebEx or something like that, and Teams has got a problem because actually we've had some cases where all of a sudden I'm seeing a team chat from another company that I had a meeting with like 2 weeks ago, and all of a sudden it starts to show up.
Yeah, and I have a habit of getting to meetings early, online meetings early, because I hate. I do everything I can to try to avoid being late. I don't always do it, but I try to, and especially with like client meetings, but I can't do that. I'm always afraid to do that with clients because I'm afraid I'm going to show up in somebody else's meeting. So I always show up. Now I've gotten to the habit of being there in that atomic time. And then if you have any technical issues, you can't get in. Go ahead, John.
When we used WebEx, we would often use personal meeting room, and that was because it was your name. It was john.pewitt@webex.com. And with Zoom, though, you don't get that vanity name. So for me, there's no real benefit to using a Zoom personal room. But it made it a lot easier to jump. We would do WebExes to talk to other techs that were in other locations. So it was just easy to say, hey, jump on my Zoom room. It's John Pewitt. And that was the easy way to get on the WebEx. But when we switched over to Zoom, everybody went from using only personal WebExes to random Zoom meetings.
John, listen.
For the Zoom rooms, when they were their physical rooms in companies, and many times companies will name their rooms, the Sierra room, the West room. So you can do it so that you could have a Zoom room that has a name, so people know that's the room they're going to go to, and they could type that in when they do a meeting. So that's useful for some organizations.
Next question.
John Pewitt of Huntersville, who was just chatting here, says any production-related Christmas tales that the panel can or wants to share.
Yeah, go ahead, John Preto.
I would say Peter Sargent, open the pod bay doors. Hal.
What was that? What was the Peter? I don't actually know what that. Oh, what?
Look at my background. Look at my background.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. Any other picks? Christmas. I've done a lot of work on Christmas, and I'm just trying to like rack my brain of anything that was interesting about. I mean, I did a lot of when I was in radio. For whatever reason, I always was the one that ended up on the radio show. We did. I think Leo did a Christmas one at one point, like once, and then decided he didn't want to do it anymore. Go ahead, Sky.
The Rose Parade preparation for the New Year's, and working at Univision in Los Angeles. That was always we were getting ready to start doing the roast parade.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, for years I did a bunch of these New Year's live things, and I'd produce venues all around the country, and they would be, you queue at live points, and that would just consume the entire holidays. My wife and family just hated that whenever I get a gig during that time, because it was just concentrated, and you were setting up all the remotes and all the stuff that was happening all during the holidays, and then you were done on January 2nd and exhausted, and then pick it up again.
I'm taking most of today off, but every other day is working because I have a CES, CES and Macworld have always kind of sucked up all.
Macworld was another one.
I have a couple different CES things, so I'm like I get the day off. Then Saturday and Sunday will just be more stressful than they were before because I took Friday off. But I'm going to hang out with my kids and watch movies and play with their whatever they get. John, and then I gave my daughter a axe. Anyway, so we'll play with that. John, and then Roscoe.
It's not really a Christmas production, but one year through strange scheduling, my wife and I were flying New Zealand, leaving here on Christmas Eve and landing in New Zealand the day after Christmas. And she made up Christmas stockings for the flight attendants. And it was the best Christmas stocking ever. We got all the first class meals, even though we weren't there.
Yeah. I find flying to be such a pure version of understanding that everything is subjective, and how you're treated is how you treat everybody else around you, because there are so many decisions that flight attendants and everyone working there can make that are both advantageous and detrimental to you. And it really all comes down to how you interact with them. It's a fascinating, it's one of the purest lessons of that. It's that way for everything, but people who just are intently transactional really lose the opportunity for understanding how all those soft skills really solve so many problems. Go ahead, Roscoe.
This goes back a ways, but back in the 80s, the nice thing about the Disney Corporation is they did their parades or their Christmas show parades before. So they were shooting those in November, sometimes even earlier than that. So as an employee, we used to do crowd control. Oftentimes we were in the background of sets. But there's one person, there's a little man that used to visit Disneyland every day named Arthur. And everyone in the park knew who Arthur was. So here comes the parade, and Arthur was sitting where he normally sits near the hub. And suddenly everyone in the parade goes over and greets Arthur as they come out. And people are like, what on earth is going on here? Why are the parade people not, why are they paying attention? So everyone wanted Arthur to star in the Christmas show. They wouldn't do it. Arthur didn't have the looks and the Disney looks and that kind of stuff. But so it was just fun. Disney always was a blast doing productions at Christmas time before Christmas.
Right. That's great. Go ahead, Peter.
So my favorite production was actually, I think it was 1968 on Christmas Eve, when Apollo 8 circled the moon.
No.
Right?
That's great, yeah.
The Genesis reading, and then, of course, the famous blue marble shot.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And think about the technology that had to be done then to make that work.
I'm kind of excited to see the next gen of landing on the moon. I think that there's going to be a moment there. I really just hope NASA doesn't screw up the video coverage as badly as they have. So in the last couple launches, there's an opportunity to get people really excited. I grew up just obsessed with NASA, and there's an opportunity to turn a whole bunch of people onto it. And as we get closer to those, if we're all still doing this, we're going to do the show if we have to. We'll get the live feed and we'll turn it into a real show.
Did you ever look to see how they did the color camera?
Mm-mm.
It was a spinning wheel in front of a black and white camera.
Oh, the old CVS model.
Yeah,
of color.
Go ahead, John.
So back in, I don't know, it was probably 98, 99. Kelsey Grammer is one of our clients using our technology at Hello World, which was our own streaming technology back in the day, Java based. And he used to read 'Twas the Night Before Christmas from his house. It was spectacular.
No, that's great. That's great. Next question.
And this is your friend, I believe, Adjoa, or I don't know if it's Adjoa. Adjoa Marie, and asks, is there promise to automated programs like Toonly or Doodly. So I'm wondering if this is to some sort of system to automate those kind of drawing animation programs.
So our school is using them in Rwanda. So for Adjoa, Chris, and you could probably ping Chris and ask him how it's working for him. But it has been actually relatively successful. I have to admit, I thought it was a little bit of a like, really? Does that make any sense? So what it does for those of you who are wondering is Doodly will let you do those little draw-ons. You want to draw something while you're talking. And what you can do is you can throw an image in, and then you can draw the line of this. You can draw how it's going to reveal the image. So you can, really quickly animate it so that it'll look like it, and it'll create a little hand that looks like it's drawing it, and so on and so forth, if you want that. And so, a lot of that became popular. The most popular one was a draw on for, let's see, Sir Ken Robinson. Let's see, draw on. This was the original. Like, let me see if I can find it for you here. Let's see if I can.
Those whiteboard explainer videos became huge for.
Well, and it was this one that turned the whole thing. Robinson. It was one video. Hold on, because he did it as a stand-up. Like, he just stood up and did it, right? He didn't. It was him just talking about the problem with education, and then it was. Here, I'll put the link into Makana, and I'll let me see if I can So I'll play just a little bit of it so people get a sense of this was actually done with a real person. So let me share this here. Let's see, share screen. I'm getting good at this, and share the audio.
Economies of the 21st century. How do we do that? Given that we can't anticipate what the economy will look like at the end of next week, as the recent turmoil is demonstrating. How do we do that? The second, though, is cultural. Every country on Earth is trying to figure out how do we educate our children so they have a sense of cultural identity and so that we can pass on the cultural genes of our communities while being part of the process of globalization. How do we square that circle? The problem is they're trying to meet the future by doing what they did in the past. And on the way, they're alienating millions of kids who don't see any purpose in going to school. When we went to school, we were kept there with a story, which was if you worked hard and did well and got a college degree, you would have a job. Our kids don't believe that. And they're right not to, by the way. You're better having a degree than not, but it's not a guarantee anymore. And particularly not.
Anyway, that was the original. It's, by the way, the best treatise on education ever spoken, in my opinion, and so it would be worth watching. But it is the original one. Someone did that, and then it just blew up, and people would hire artists to do those explainer videos, and it's become a big business. And then, of course, what Doodly does, that's the only one. I don't know Toonly, but I'm sure they're very similar. But Doodly does, you can basically do that yourself. You build those graphics out. You have some, and then you can decide how it's going to be drawn. I think I think it has a value because we just find that the viewership is way higher. Like that, and I know Chris has found it to be very successful in what he's doing. Go ahead, John.
So what advice can we give young Benjamin after watching that video, which I agree with, which none of the people that I've hired over the last 20 years had a college degree, and I hired them all out of high school. And so we set this gentleman on the right pathway.
It depends, if you're talking about going into engineering, you need to have a degree. That's so Benjamin's already talked about needing, he's going into engineering. That's a place where you still need that. You're not going to move forward, in that area. The only thing that I would say is that, and I'm trying to get my cousin on, my cousin is a good example, and I will probably not get his history perfectly correct, but my cousin, as I remember it, didn't have, the wherewithal to go to the college that he wanted to go to when he started. And so he became a machinist. And so he was doing machining as he got, I believe my cousin has a PhD in mechanical engineering now. But he was doing machining. And then he worked for he still, I believe, works for Raytheon, and doing incredible things. Mostly he can't talk about. But I'd love to get him on if he's allowed to get on. He's got clearance issues. But what makes him different is that he can think about something and build it. Like he understands how the metal is going to respond, and he understands what it's going to do, and he can think through things because of that mechanical understanding. So the only thing I would say is whatever engineering you're going into is build things, like build lots of things that are related to that interest, so that he said that the thing that he's told me is that people who come out of engineering school that haven't done that just they don't understand it really. Like they understand it in a theoretical sense, but not in a real sense. And doing the projects they give you in college don't give you, like he does, he was working on things that really had to be, went into production. And so the more you can get into that, that's the only thing I would say, but I do think that you do need to agree for engineering. I think that's a place where no one's going to hire you without a degree in engineering, education, engineering, some science things, some government things. You need those little pieces of paper before people, whether it makes you better or not. Medicine, law, there are things that those are ones that I don't know if it makes you any better at what you do, but it definitely is required to move forward. Benjamin?
Yeah, agree. That's like really the narrative I've been hearing. And it's very strange, right? That like somehow this piece of paper defines your like how much you've learned. But someone put it to me this way just a couple of days ago, that they were asked, or their friend was asked in an interview after coming out of engineering school, what are the dimensions of a 2x4? And some people don't learn that in college. Many people don't. Right. And without that kind of knowledge, it's really hard.
Yeah, and I think if you said you're going to go into media, I would say not to bother, unless Roscoe's your teacher. That you're going to get real world. Unless it's Roscoe. I think that you could do most of that on your own. The big thing is that you do need an organized way to learn it. And so school for some kids is required. Like they just have to. They need the structure. They need to have to show up somewhere. They have to, there's a structure for their education. There's for a long time, and even now, there are huge holes in my understanding of certain things just because I didn't go to school for it and I didn't fill it in ever. I just did what I needed to learn. Now I've done so many things in the last 30 years that I filled in most of those gaps, whether it's print and games and interactive and everything. But you end up with huge gaps in knowledge if you don't have an organized way to do it. And this show is helping us fill a lot of those in with each other. The heterogeneous mix here of understanding helps us build this out. My attempt next year will be to start building that kind of more organized way of learning all of this stuff. Accelerated and organized. It'll be the first. I've done it before with Pixel Core, and with a school and things. So I've thought about it a little bit, and we're going to start playing with it in January. Go ahead, John, and then Roscoe, and then Peter.
Well, we could have a good education discussion tomorrow on the value of a degree, but with my students, when I've talked about it, the value of your degree is what the effort you put into it. And I think back to I went to my undergraduate was radio, television, film. And the Zettel textbook. I'm not sure the book learning meant everything, but the fellow students were doing production throughout life.
Yeah,
the ones who made it.
The thing that was useful for me in the time that I went to school was access to the equipment, access to the someone to ask questions, access to facilities. I didn't have all that stuff, and back then it was a lot more expensive to have that. So access to bigger things than I can afford was and other people that were interested in it. That I could work with were the big value, and then the ability to do unpaid internships, without breaking the law. That was, for me, it was super useful. I took a lot of unpaid internships because I could get credit for them, and I didn't care about the credit. I just knew that I could get in without a company having to pay me, which made it easier for me to get access to.
And a company would do that because you were insured. That was the big issue we had. The companies would take our students, and other people say, "Well, I don't want to be enrolled. I just want to go to the company." And the company say, "Well, you got to be enrolled because we won't do it without the insurance."
Yep. Roscoe, and then Peter.
Yeah, I was going to say the motivated students really don't need college. I mean, I told Mickey, or Mickey asked me about this. I had Matt Liebetique, who was the DP for Black Swan, has done extremely well in the industry. And he was very frustrated because my class was 1 hour, 2 hours and 45 minutes from 1 to 3:45 every day. He wanted to spend 2 hours in lighting. It
Right.
didn't fit the mold of the class. But what has he excelled in life? Doing lighting.
Right. Yeah. And go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I was actually going to agree with you, and I think you said it was your brother, cousin. I know the thing that served me the best when I first went to work for IBM in 1981 was the fact that I knew how to bend metal.
Yeah.
Because we were always building. I mean, I was in the shop where we were building, I'll say serial number -10. So the first time we ever tried to build something, somebody actually has to know how to bend the metal and create the cases and do things like that, as well as the stuff I learned in shop, which isn't taught anymore, was very important.
One of the things that's new that just kind of came up for me that I've started talking about that I haven't really, it hasn't fully formed in my head, is the idea of building education completely around the creation process, where you learn all the technical things that you need to know, like how could you structure school. I know this is a Saturday discussion, not a Friday discussion, but how do you structure all of school around learning chemistry through baking and learning, math through engineering and building things, but everything is about building something. It's the context for all learning, could be building, and could be, doing those things. And, we learn math because we need it for these things, but not we learn math for math's sake. And because I think that it would be much more visceral, and a lot of people would come out actually useful. I think that there's a huge piece of, I don't think it's all of it. I think there's lots of other things, but there's a huge piece of what we think of as depression, of not being able to have any applied skills. I think that it really it doesn't cause it, but I think it magnifies it. John, and then Benjamin, and then Mickey.
Well, I think, Alex, you had the advantage of growing up on the farm. I think I mentioned this before with our parks work. The best IT person I've ever known works for the parks, and it's because he grew up on a farm. Yeah. And we were doing some antenna stuff and trying to figure out how to hook it and how to mount it. He says, well, I'll just weld that. And the rest of the IT, what? I'll just weld that.
And I think that it would be good if we structured it, because, how I learned to weld was my uncle just telling me to do smiley faces. Like that was he's like, there's a couple things, like don't ever, what was the thing that we learned was don't ever hammer your weld and have the welder in two different hands. Always use the same hand. And it wasn't because you couldn't do it with the other hand. It was to make sure that you didn't ground yourself, So you always use the same, little things like always use the same hand. Are you okay? But I was like 10 years old, running around with a welder. And
it
you
wasn't only the welding, it was, baling wire. It was the idea that where you are, you just have to figure out how to do it. And it was not electronic. It was not electrons. There's lots of other things moving in a farm.
Yeah. PTO shafts. That was the thing that, and to this day, I roll my sleeves up, and someone asked me why I did that. It took me a long time to remember what it was. And I was constantly terrified that my sleeve would get caught in a PTO shaft and it would rip my arm off. Anyway, Benjamin.
Yeah, it's very interesting because there was I don't know, from my limited view, it seems like there's been this trend in education over the last few years to move away from hands-on and applied education, kind of somebody mentioned,
because they can't measure it. They don't know what to do with it. Exactly. They can't measure it, and it's crazy.
And I see this upward resurgence in the last 5-10 years, at least as I've been in school, and I've been lucky enough to be at schools where this is important, and I prioritize it, so I seek out opportunities to do it. But I just think, like Roscoe mentioned in Wakana, theater programs, shop programs, robotics programs, this kind of thing is really gaining steam right now, and at a point when shops look like they were going to go away. So I think it's really interesting to see this kind of reversal. I'm excited. I think there are a lot of schools out there that they're really pushing this. It might be super mainstream, but
yeah, I mean, a lot of it is extracurricular. My kids before COVID had a makerspace, and we'd pay, I don't know how much per month for them to be part of it. It wasn't considered very expensive, but it's got a little CNC, and it's got a printer, and it's got tons of arts and crafts, and they would go there every day that they were allowed to go there. Like, and they spend 2 or 3 hours after school just in that makerspace making things. And to me, that was like and Novato, Marin is benefited from. I mean, most of that's underwritten by the county, and so it's paid for by our incredibly high taxes, and so at least I get some value out of it. But it is like those maker spaces, I think, are just amazing for kids, and I feel like, and my kids are handy. The other thing that I admit that I do is I turn off their Wi-Fi a lot, so my kids are disconnected from the world at least half the day. They have to ask for it to be turned on, and I do that mostly because it forces them to do things and build things and work on things and read, and they get really good at stuff. And I think that it can be something that the internet can kind of fill in their time, not because they want it to, but just because it's there, and by turning it off, it gets them more engaged, and they've done much better mentally and everything else by being disconnected more than half the day. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, like, from my own experience, like back then, I knew I wanted to get into mixing back then, though it was more on music than what I'm doing now. And yeah, so I decided to take up electronics engineering, and it was just way too slow for, we were studying things that I didn't feel I really needed. Like, I didn't need high level calculus for mixing music or mixing programming. Yes, I needed some math. So I dropped out of college, and to Alex's point earlier, like, I did have access to people who were in the industry and also that had the equipment that facilitated my self learning. So, like, it's not for everyone, I think. Like, formal education, like, if you know what you want to do and you are dead set on finding the means to teach yourself, I don't think it's absolutely necessary.
And then again, I think there are things like engineering, medicine, law, education, science, and some area where those things, they just want a piece of paper that you have to, it's give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Anyway, next question.
I've got to go after this one. James Babbitt of San Diego says, "Hi, Alex. You mentioned master classes. Has anyone tried the great courses or other alternatives?" And I will see you guys all tomorrow.
Thanks, Bill. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Did I miss? We lost Sky too. I realized that Sky might have been waving. I watched the great courses, and I find them hard to watch. I've watched some of them. I haven't watched ever one all the way through. But I'm very unluxury. I feel like they were videos that could have just been audio for the most part. They were the precursor to masterclass. I feel like someone said, we're going to do the great courses, and then we're going to turn the volume turn the quality switch all the way to the top. And so masterclass is just like an Uber version of great courses, in my opinion. Has anyone else watched any of those? I mean, to me, the masterclasses, I wish everything was at that level. I wish there was a live component that people could ask questions, from masterclass. And, but I think LinkedIn Learning is probably the next step down from there, in that area. And one that's more in our industry would be Ripple Training. I think they do a really great job of building training materials. It's really well organized. But those are the three big ones for me. Ripple in our specific vertical, and then LinkedIn is kind of a generalist, and then master classes. And we have to remember that masterclass, I mean, they shoot them in our studio in 3210. So we see the crews, when we see the 4 walls that they build up. They're all sets, they don't do anything in someone's house, except for Alice Waters. I think they did it in her house. But I think in general, they don't do that. And it's like it's a crew of 40 people. Like, this isn't like they're not messing around. It's a real production, it's much higher level. But I feel like if we figure out ways to scale those ideas, then we end up with that kind of content for everything. So anyway, next question. And by the way, it's worth every penny. Like, that's $150 a year or something like that. I'd highly recommend it. except for it's really hard to get registered on your Apple TV. I still watch it I still have to share it from my phone. Anyway, next question.
Bill has left the building.
Oh, that's me. Jonas Tatel says, Pixel Conduit, could you have a link to the Win version on the website? And I apologize. I looked after you did that, and I didn't. It's not there anymore. It was really hard for us to support on Windows, so it may have just gotten taken down. I know that we had a lot of trouble with the Windows side. Windows is difficult when it comes to audio and video, in my opinion, especially from our experience with that. Anyway, Roberto Barro, from Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania, says, my church does a weekly live stream of the service onto YouTube. We get several comments that some people can hear the instruments but can't hear the singer, or vice versa. Is that a connectivity issue? What would cause that? There's two things that could cause it. One is you need to mix for the online. You need to mix for the stream. You can't just take the mix that you're using for the church and put it into the stream, because you'll mix it in a way that generally means that you're going to hear the voice really heavy and not hear the music. That's usually what happens, is the voice is way ahead of the instruments if you take the room mix and then mix it and pass it back in. That would be the first thing that I would go after. The second thing is that you could, in some cases, be out of, you could have a polarity issue where you're out of phase, where you're basically, you're doing a stereo mix. We've had this. If you have a stereo mix and one channel is got a polarity issue with it, and that could happen randomly. So if it's happening in different ways, what would typically happen is it would be the exact opposite of what we're talking about, which is that you would not hear the voice, but you might hear the music if it wasn't centered. Anything centered will disappear. So anything in the center will disappear inside of a polarity issue. It means that and the reason that it's interesting, one possible outcome from what you're talking about, maybe not it, but what could be the case is that you've got one cable that's out of polarity, and when you get it right, the voice is way ahead of the audio, and when you get it wrong, the voice is gone. So that would create the symptoms that you're talking about exactly. Go ahead, John.
You just did this yesterday with Elmo, didn't you, Alex?
Well, I think we got it pretty close with Elmo, but I did put a separate mic in, and we blended it, and Mickey was telling me the guitar is a little behind or a little ahead, and so I was trying to kind of even that out as best I could. I couldn't really hear the mix in the same way that I should have, as I went through it. But anyway, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm wondering as well. I'm wondering where he's getting the feed from. Like if it's an aux from the house board, and if it's an aux, you kind of really have to monitor and make a separate mix for it, as you mentioned. It's not just like it says output. Let me get an out from here, and it'll be fine. So
yeah, absolutely. Courtney and then Roscoe.
One thing is to have the people that are listening at home check to see what their receiver is set on. If they're watching on a AV receiver, a lot of times they'll have it set to Dolby 5.1 or 7.1, and it's not a Dolby mix. It will cancel out certain things because it thinks it's matrix. So make sure you set it to stereo PCM, and usually they should be able to hear everything that way.
One thing that's interesting is if you're doing a stereo output and you have this polarity issue that I was talking about, if you're wearing headphones, it will sound fine. If you're if you're listening to it in a laptop or in an iPad, an iPhone or whatever, the voice will disappear. So you could get both things at the same time. You could have the voice way in the front for some viewers that are watching it with their headphones on, and you could end up with people on their phones watching it summed, and they would be not hearing the voice at all. So you could get both responses from the same piece of content. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of the smaller churches have old analog boards, and they just don't have. So what you can do is steal the monitor send that you're sending to the stage and send that as your aux out sometimes. But digital boards have plenty of outs. You can usually get enough outs to do this. So that's just one thing.
But if it's the same mix, if you're doing the same mix that you're doing for the house into the stream, you're going to have all kinds of volume issues.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's what I say. You have to get an aux. You have to do it as an A2.
Yeah. Next question. No, me. That's me. Sorry, I keep on doing that. Roberto Barrow also asks, what printer is that I mentioned for labeling your cables? And unfortunately, it's just a little too far away for me to grab, but it is a Brother Cube
P-Touch.
A P-Touch. I'm sorry, P-Touch. Is it Brother?
But
Brother makes it, though.
You have the automated one. You have the automated one.
The P-Touch.
You have the better one.
I have the P-Touch Cube Plus. It is not the Cube, but the Cube Plus. There's $30 difference, and it's worth every penny. so you get a lot more options with what kind of ribbons you can use. And I have lots of ribbons, blacks and whites and gold and all kinds of other things that I use. And it's got software that you can put on your phone that you can connect to it over Bluetooth, which is how I normally use it. But on a day-to-day basis, again, I took it to the office and I brought it back and it's just sitting over there. But usually I have it plugged into my computer because the software on the Mac, at least, is better than what you have on your phone, and it's faster. I don't have to keep on finding it. And so while I'm working on a day-to-day basis, I just plug it in, but it's so nice. Anyway, go ahead, Roscoe.
Never, ever buy labeling tape that does not split down the middle. All your tape must split down the middle now. It's so much easier to use.
It is. And I will say that I buy the tape that with it, it's important to buy the tape that is made by Brother or whatever, because it's got chips that talk to it, so it knows what it's got and everything else. But if you buy some kind of generic one, I know that you pay more for that, but it makes it easier and it's not that much money. Steve?
Yeah, this is the P-Touch 1180, a little less features, but very handy for printing out really quick labels.
Yep.
And they're not that expensive.
Yeah, but having a labeler is great. And I grew up. Some of you, my grandfather actually labeled everything, so I got this kind of naturally from him. But he had the one that was a rotator, and it had like a little tongue that came out, and you'd rotate it around and go clink, and then rotate it around and go clink, and then one letter at a time to make everything. And he did that for everything. It was, sorry, what was it?
The Dymo.
Dymo. Yeah. So that we dymoed like everything was labeled in the house. And even when I lived there for a year, when my grandmother went to care, and so I lived there for a year to keep the house going, and it was just so nostalgic to see all those labels on every switch. My grandfather, every switch had a label on it to make sure that you knew what it was. Anyway, Mickey.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment how the Brother label makers detect what cartridges in there is with those tiny pins that are inside, and the cartridges have tiny holes. So if the pins don't get, the pins are go down with a spring. So if they're brought down, a combination of them, I think there are 5 pins.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it detects what the exact label is.
I thought it was a
inside.
chip, but I think it's just pins. It's much simpler. Go ahead, John.
And when you buy the Brother keyboard, Brother printer with a keyboard, be sure to get the QWERTY keyboard. I picked up one years ago that's alphabetical order, and I haven't replaced it. It is horrible to use.
Yeah, and I have to say, I mean, we've owned so many labelers. I mean, because we would put them in all of our office kits. So every office kit that went out with what we built to these office kits, that we should talk about it sometime because they were great. Shannon designed them. Shannon and some other folks designed these, and they were like these little tool things, but you pop it open and it had a printer and it had a labeler and it had, but it had also Advil and tons of all the other things that you would need, and sanitizers and little snacks. And like, it was like, there was like a list. They just went through the list to build it, and it would just go into the truck with everything else. And the guys, they got to the point where they would ship them, and we thought we were original, but those kinds of logistics kits, once you know what you're looking for, you see them, and everybody has different versions of them. But but having the labeler in there was a piece of it. But we went through a lot of those, and the Cube is definitely, in my opinion, the best one of the bunch. Anyway, next question. Oh, no, it's me again. Sorry, I'll get out of the habit. James Babbitt asks, "Hi, Alex. Maybe we could get Elvis Schoenberg, the conductor of the Orchestra Surreal, on office hours. If someone has a contact him. Love to have him on. So it's just a matter of someone actually being able to get a hold of them." Leo Mindell from London, hey Leo, said, given the choice as an advanced webcam, would you go with a BMD, Sony, Panasonic, Canon body? I want to keep it short depth of field, so looking for 1.4 lens or similar. I would say all things equal, I would get some version of a Blackmagic camera. Like, I mean, I don't, I think that it could be a micro and the reason is because as soon as you start buying these cameras, you're eventually going to want to switch them. And as soon as you switch them, you're going to want to shade them. And, like there's like this chain reaction that goes on there that you can't get with the other cameras. So if you're going to buy into it thinking that you're going to keep on growing, if you're not, I think a Sony A7S is really beautiful. It looks great. And you can get tons of Canon and Panasonic little handy cams that will work great. So it's not like you can't, it just depends on whether you think that you're going to build into a system. And that's what Blackmagic has really cornered is this, I have a $300 piece of hardware that can shade all these cameras. And I think that makes it really hard to compete with. Go ahead, TJ.
I would second that Sony as a second alternative, just because the Sony A7 that I've been using now, it's been turned on for a month and a half, solid 24/7. I just keep forgetting to turn it off, and it's a DSLR, still not giving me any problems pushing video out of it.
Yeah, and I will say also that I am going into kind of a heavy experiment mode. I got these cables that I just showed up yesterday, which it's like an HDMI cable with power and lightning that I'm getting ready to use for like a cooking. I'm doing a cooking test that I'll inflict on all of you at some point. And it's really just a test. I'm going to show you how I make breakfast or something, but it's really just the concept of doing it. But I'm using all phones for it, like all phones to input it. So that might be another way to play if most of us have a phone. So that's another thing to think about. Michael Vosbein from Woodstock, Georgia asks, I see a lot of people using Apple AirPods to monitor live streams. I always get too much latency with Bluetooth. What's the secret? There is no secret. You shouldn't do it. You shouldn't monitor your stuff you should always monitor with a wired connection. There are all kinds of problems with monitoring things with AirPod. The only reason that I would use an AirPod Pro is if you're doing an Atmos or surround stream. So I do use them to monitor some of the stuff that we do because I have to know whether it's working in 3D space and working for that target audience. So you might want to listen to it there to understand target audience. But as a general monitoring feature, I would always use a wired connection. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, and I think I have a bit of insight on what Michael is doing. He needs to monitor himself, and also because he's teaching drums, how to play the drums, and he wants to be able to monitor wirelessly through AirPods, and that's not going to work with the kind of latency that you're dealing with. Yeah.
All right. Roberto Barro again asks, we have an X32 with live stream audio from the aux send with a separate mix, but thanks for the information. Merry Christmas. So an X32 will let you could totally build an entirely separate mix or build off of that mix this is the question about the church having a separate out. The X32 has got plenty of power to do a separate mix as a separate bus where you remix everything for the live stream. So you wouldn't just send out another version of what you have in the house. You would build another mix that is controlling that. And you definitely have the tools to do that. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. I'm curious how they're getting that mix to, like, say, their streaming machine. Say, for example, if ever they're using Zoom and if they're just using the built-in USB card that's included with the X32 and using Zoom, bear in mind that Zoom takes all the channels of the interface and sums them together if you have more than two channels.
If you're using the USB and you're going into Zoom and you're getting all those channels, you will need to use Loopback on a Mac to reroute those channels to get just what you need. That's a great point. That could be the whole thing, especially if you're changing things in the way you're mixing things. It could definitely be one way one day and another. So last question for today is Jonas Tatel says, can I use a Mix Pre 3 as a 3-channel mixer for an ATEM Mini Pro? And the answer is absolutely. You just need to know that your output I think we figured out negative 13 dB. Is that right? The output.
I think they were doing plus 13 to get the
plus 13.
The what do you call this consumer line level out of the Mix Pre, because it's just a mini jack, up to semi professional line level, and then essentially bringing down the the input of the ATEM, so it's not using as much of the circuitry of the ATEM and getting rid of that system noise.
Yeah, the circuitry of the I mean, they're getting there. I mean, they'll figure out audio eventually, but it's not their strong suit yet. We love Blackmagic. I mean, it's not like we're no shade here. I mean, we're happy with what we get, but the audio support on everything is work in progress. Anyway, everyone have a Merry Christmas. It was a great Christmas gift to be hanging out with all of you, this morning. And it's a great way to start off the Christmas day, or for some of you end it, and some of you in the middle of it. But thank you for showing up. I literally got on this morning expecting 2 or 3 of you to be here. Like, it was like, I was like, I'm going to do it because but I was like, and I was like, I'll just hang out with whoever shows up. So I was really ready to have like 3 or 4 of us hang out for 4 hours. But it's been a pleasure to see you all today. I'm going to go ahead and open the post show if anyone wants to hang out. And, but otherwise, if I don't see you there, we'll see you guys tomorrow or the next couple, next little bit. And thank you for everyone, all the attendees who showed up, all the panelists who showed up and still had another great show. So anyway, we're going to jump into the after show for anyone who would like to do that. I still feel like we need I know I say this every single time, but what shows up for me is that the need to have like a warp sound when we jump from one. It's so.
Enjoy your movies, everybody.